So everyone here today, we are going to have approximately a 1 hour sort of joint session with the council, and then we will get going with the regular business. So apologies for making you wait, but this was scheduled before some of these came on the agenda. Thank you. Okay, so we've had some requests from, I think, both sides. You know, the council likes to meet with the various boards, and it's been a couple of years, it may have even been since before COVID, that we had a joint meeting. And it's always good to kind of discuss. We can sort of, get feelings from both sides as to where everybody's at and kind of what the council wants to hear from us. So it's just kind of an open forum to sort of talk about those things. And Ms. Liz Johnson will be our facilitator. Yeah,
and before, can everyone turn on their microphones? I don't see a lot of green lights on, just so that we're catching the discussion for the live stream and video.
Thank you, Michelle. And I'll try to remind everybody to speak into a mic. If I see it, I may not see it. So first, I want to say thank you all for taking the time to have us here with you tonight. What council's been doing over the last couple of months and will continue to do over the next couple of months is meet with all our advisory committees and with you all, the Planning and Zoning Board. And so at every one of these meetings, we've had one member of council as kind of the lead to kind of kick off the meeting from our side, from council, not side, we're not on sides, but from the council perspective. So what I want to say is that you can see right now we have 3 of us here from council, and maybe here comes 4. All of us were not able and probably will not be able to make all of these meetings, and that please do not read anything into that. It just means we have a conflict. We serve on all kinds of other boards and committees outside of council, and often we have conflicts. And then there are folks that have conflicts with work too. So I know every member of council wants very much to attend all of these meetings, but will unfortunately not be able to. So I just want to make sure you all know that. And one reason we set up these meetings, or probably the reason we set up these meetings, because we want to really hear from our volunteer committee members on all our boards. That the work that you all do, and especially here at the Planning and Zoning Board, is very vital to the work that we do here in the town. And we appreciate all that you do. You should know that we all of us appreciate the time and attention you give to the planning work that goes on here in the town of Morrisville. And I will tell you from my perspective, because I've been at this for a while, the work that you do is really important, because you start on these planning applications and the big planning processes that we go through. You start those, and those items come to you all first, and you do an excellent job of delving into the issues and asking some really important questions. And the work that you do matters to us, and you help us greatly. I will tell you, sometimes you do all the work and it makes it easy when it gets to council. Sometimes you do the work that makes an applicant change some things by the time it comes to council. So, and that's really important to the work that we do. So I want to make sure that you all know that we appreciate you all very, very much. And so, having said that, I would say I would turn it over to you all, members of the Planning and Zoning Board, to just let us know what's on top of your mind, anything you want to talk about, anything concerning you, anything you want us to know about. That's why we're here. And this is being recorded, so the other council members that are not here will be able to review and get the feedback as well. So we're here for your feedback. All right, does that help? Okay.
So is there anyone that has? I know we've had a lot of feedback. People have talked sort of, informally about wanting to, talk about this. So I guess let's start with Rick, if you have any discussion. Or
it's great.
Before you do that, I failed to do this. Do we need to go around and do intros? Would that be helpful? Do we need to do that? All right, let's do that. I'm sorry, Rick, and then you can have the mic.
I know.
Yeah, and for the public too that might be watching. So I'm Liz Johnson, Mayor Pro Tem here in the town of Morrisville.
I'm Lee Langston. I'm the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Board.
I'm Vicki Scroggins Johnson. I'm a member of the Town Council.
Chris Roebuck, I'm on the Planning and Zoning Board.
TJ Cawley, Mayor.
Rick Bain on the Planning and Zoning Board. And Tim Toterai on the Planning and Zoning Board.
Steve Rouse, serving on my fourth term on the Town Council.
Ken Sack, Planning and Zoning Board.
That's great. I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, we can talk.
I think the biggest thing, everybody knows it's been on the board, is in regards to the developments and things to take a look at, is the effect as it has on the highway in conjunction with police and safety and fire department and all those things in consideration. And I might seem like a stick in the mud on some of these things, but I'm not afraid to ask those questions. So I think that's the biggest thing, the aggregate of everything, to see how it is. Because it's easy to go vertical, but it's what do you do with everything else? That's the only thing I'm going to say.
Don't believe you.
That's well said.
So we're just hearing from more of you guys right now, right?
Yeah. I mean, maybe just kind of continue that. I think that's sort of what my concerns. I always feel I'm a bit of an outlier on discussions when we look at planning. So the zoning part of the thing seems to work really well. The planning side of it, sometimes I feel that we do things in chunks. So we'll look at a development, we'll discuss that development, and it gets approved. And in all my time that I've been on this board, we've never said no to anything. So there's never been a housing project that we've said no to. It's always yes. And so we might make a micro adjustment to one thing or the other, but it seems that the marching has been, let's build, let's build. My concern is around some of the macro things that goes on that affects all of the residents around, some things like safety, the infrastructure, schooling. You hear me all the time harping on those things, and just would love to talk a little bit about more of those in detail as we continue to grow, which is a necessity, but how we address those things in a way that is going to be meaningful for everybody that lives here.
I agree a lot with what Tim said. The regret that I have is that we don't really get people here. And I understand, Planning and Zoning Board, that doesn't sound sexy or anything like that. But I think it would be really great somehow, but you can't make people come if they don't want to come. But, when we're questioning applicants and things of that nature, I try to be aware that, we're not just representing ourselves, we're representing the community. We need to put our community hats on and try to think, well, you're not here, but what do you think about this? Is it something that's going to benefit the town as a whole? Or is it just going to benefit, a little subdivision or two? So, I just think we could find a way to get out there what we're doing, and that input from the public is important.
Yeah, I think one of the things I would like to come out of this discussion is just a little bit, more of sort of, we don't really operate in a vacuum. We have the comprehensive plans, we have all those things, but we don't have as much sort of context. Like what, we're sort of feeling things out, like you were saying, Ms. Johnson, about the, trying to get some questions going before it comes to you guys. Like, I think it would be helpful, maybe if we did this more often, hopefully, in the future, to feel out what council, whatever the current council is at any given time, what their sort of thoughts are going forward with things. Maybe we can become with a little more educated, a little more pointed questioning, and maybe avoid sometimes going, council has already sort of said we would like X in general. We don't want to be over here dealing with B and C. Let's at least stay in the, the Y, Z area, to try to help sort of you guys get as much as you can out of there. But I also do agree it would be, I don't know any way to do this, but having more participation from the public would be welcome, because it is unfortunate. Sometimes we make decisions that I feel like are somewhat consequential, and they don't really get a lot of notice from anyone. And even when they go to council, I'll listen to meetings or whatever sometimes, and they don't really get a lot of notice at that level either. And then people are surprised when X happens, and you know, when we do everything we can to try to do it in a public way, and then it's still, you know, I know everyone's difficult to follow everything, and the town does a good job about with social media posts and all that. I see those. But yeah, that will be the biggest sort of thing, but I'm not sure what we can do to change that right now. But it is nice kind of knowing the more of this sort of thought process of the council and certain things.
Well, I'm happy with the strategic planning process. So I'm on the other side, so I like execution. So from my standpoint, I appreciate the strategic plans, and I like what the planning team does with the checkoff boxes. So it's very clear for me right when I come to a meeting to know we hit bucket 2.1.2.2.3, and I look at it more from the standpoint of that's my guidance. So it's in plan, we met it with this, and I'm looking for details that maybe could supplement what they did, something that was gapped. So for me, I'm very happy with the process. I read through all of the documents. I read through the surveys. So when you go to a different area of the city, for example, in the fitness center, and you did surveys or you put something online, I tend to read those and rely on that feedback. So it doesn't necessarily for me have to be an in-person, somebody being there. I'm happy with data, so it's just my personality. So I am a data person. Like, okay, if this is the percentages and everything maps out, let's do the best we can for the interest of the people. So that's very helpful for me. Even the transportation studies, I love 20 pages of transportation studies. Might not understand all of it, but it gives me a level of confidence that when somebody asks me as a neighbor to say, I feel bad about the traffic, that I can at least refer them to a report and say, there was a lot of money spent to analyze it. You can read this, and this is where it's posted. And I leverage everything that's done through the planning committee and through the town council to share out that information so they never feel like it's my opinion. It was analyzed based on people that do this for a living. This is why we're pursuing this option, because it was all part of a plan years ago. So for me, I like data and how we use the consultants, and we're leveraging them. That just helps me. That to me, that's the more information. Like tonight, hours and hours and hours of readings. So that was helpful for me. But from the public standpoint, they might see somebody, you know, they'll see our committee here for maybe an hour or two, and they don't realize what the city behind the scenes have been working on for an entire year, and we're just looking at the results that were pulled together. So that might, you know, I think it always helps, even from your standpoint, to share out at meetings that there's a lot of work done. So for me, that's helpful.
And I'll agree with that. Definitely. Thank you.
So I was going to say thank you for saying that, because you're right. You all do hours and hours of work. Our staff does multiple times that, and you know, and that's the part that the public doesn't see. They see only the comments that are made at a meeting, and some. And I will tell you one thing, and then I'll comment on a couple of things. But one thing that I always I'm concerned about is, and you all do this too. Sometimes we will talk about an item over multiple meetings, and we've said some things the first time, and then the second time we say some more things, you know, and we may not repeat because the seven of us were together the first time and we remember what each one said. And so then when you get to the last meeting, when the public comes in, and then they haven't heard the comments at the first 2 to 5 meetings or whatever, and you don't want to repeat everything all the time either. So that's always concerning to me when we talk about engaging the public and making sure the public knows there's a lot that goes into what we all do. So I appreciate you saying that. And I do want to talk about and we'll all chime in here, but the engaging the public is really something we talk about a lot. And the more public input, the better, 100%. And if you have the silver bullet on how to figure that out, you all let us know, because we would like to know. And I we'll keep doing what we do from, a communications department will keep posting on social media. Steve has a newsletter he puts out like every other week practically. And so we all try to share as much as we can. But I will tell you, I think the loss of a local newspaper is kind of devastating to that effort, because that I thought was very helpful in many, many years. And we don't have that anymore. So I don't know. Anybody else want to chime in on the things we heard?
Well, yeah, even in my time on this board, there was at least a representative from the News and Observer that would come to the meetings occasionally, and then so just in the last like 7 years,
They
that's kind
stopped
of
it.
so.
The only thing I would add, first of all, I want to thank you all for all the work that you do. And I think that the thing that would be most helpful for me moving forward, for all of us, is in the remaining amount of development opportunities in Morrisville, what can we do together collaboratively, the board, where we can, the planning and zoning board, looking at, what kind of development do we want, addressing some of the things Tim brought up, congestion on the roads, the tree canopy issue came up. I think that there could perhaps be other options we give developers, in terms of space, instead of just turning it into multifamily or townhomes. There's a lot of opportunities as I travel around the county looking at co-working space. There's a really creative way of reinventing the way offices are used. And I think Morrisville might have an opportunity to do some of that. Because I think what happens a lot of times is when applicants come through the process, they've gone so far down the process with the staff and with the planning and zoning, that by the time it gets to the council, we haven't had the public engaged, and then we make a decision whether it's a rezoning or the way we're going to use a property. So I don't know if there's something in the process we can have where we're all able to tell developers early on that if you want to develop this in Morrisville, this is what we want, and that we say no earlier rather than them having to spend the money and the time. We want their investment. I think at the other thing we have to realize, though, for the residents of Morrisville that are going to listen to this, that we've been the envy of every city in the county, every town in the county, because 55% of our revenue was coming from commercial. And so we were able to keep the tax rate relatively low because of that growth. I mean, if you even look at Cary, it's the other way around. They have more residential, and all these towns are trying to catch up. So I think it's a healthy balance. But whatever you all can do, or maybe we can talk about that during the retreat, something that we can do that, is basically saying, well, these are the kinds of things that we can agree on in terms of the type of development, so that before they come to Morrisville and they don't go through the entire process. Because, I mean, we don't want them to go through the whole process and they spend all this money and time and we go, well, we don't want your development, right? So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think that's something important that we need to think about.
One of the things that we don't really have insight on is a weighting criteria. So we have a lot of things that are important to development within the organization. We suggested this a while back, that there would be some frame of reference for weighting. So what is most important? Is it bringing housing into the town? Is it having infrastructure? Is it tree line? Whatever is most important. I mean, there's a series of like 7, 8, 9 things that we value, but we don't have a real clarity around what is most important. So I think having that would be helpful, because then as we start to do even earlier in the process, we can give that and say, okay, this is where we want to steer it. The other thing with the public is we're in a situation where it's a difference between data and perception. So we have access to all the data. We could look at the 20-page transportation study and get into it. But at the end of the day, everyone looks at it and goes, the road I'm traveling is more congested. And that's busy at 9 o'clock in the morning, at 9 o'clock at night, and you're putting up a apartment building here next to it. Tell me how that computes. I don't believe your transportation study because it is counter to my perception of what's going on. And if we can address that in some way, that would be helpful. But I think that's a hurdle you have to face on.
I will say, I think both these last two comments go back to the UDO. I mean, the way to make those changes is in the UDO, not in discussing what's written. Like, that's how you make that developer make that change early on. Pushing the UDO as hard as you can in that direction. That's how you get your weighting in there, is you write it down. The whole purpose of the UDO is to have an open book so that everyone can see what's there. I mean, if we had that written down, then we would be pushing those people.
I think it'd be a nice exercise if y'all were interested in doing that kind of prioritization, if you want to have those 7 things and you guys, you as a group, not just guys, do that weighting like we did for sidewalk prioritization or something like that. And if you use that as a tool to make your decisions, that could be something. In regards to the UDO, I'm hesitant to be so prescriptive about things. We're trying to give some flexibility in the by right. And I think staff has been doing a really good job of hearing the council and encouraging developers to bring some options for affordable housing, sustainability, and things like that as we go forward. I think everyone's heard that home ownership is really important to us. So those are the kind of things that I think if you're looking for direction, we don't want to have the tail wagging the dog. You guys are a separate entity, and you guys have your own perspectives, and you guys have different neighborhoods that you're talking to or things like that. So you add value because you bring different perspectives to it. We don't want you to just be our mirror. You add more value by having different perspectives. So I'd love for you guys to just, when you talk about things, what values and interests are informing your decision? You're really concerned about more traffic on that road because of this, because the TIA says this, but it seems like the TIA is only addressing the marginal change. Well, we're so bad off right now anyway. The marginal change, it just makes it worse, even though it doesn't seem to make a big difference. And they're not going to have to do more than a part of a turn lane. So the TIA isn't really helping us. So I guess where I'm coming is just let us know why you're deciding these things. And in regards to nothing ever saying no to, I think staff is really good about sharing with developers. That's probably not going to work with this council. So it doesn't even get to you, the ones that aren't happening. And more granularly, I think this council, and I'm just one person, this is my interpretation, allowed a lot more development by right during the last land use plan update. And we made it very clear with the residents that we understand that there's concerns about overburdening our infrastructure. So we mentioned that the McCrimmon Corridor, TOD, and Town Center are the places where more density will be okay. And we're okay with that, and we're sort of letting that happen. Anywhere else, that's something that I'm not very supportive of. And so take that as you wish. You guys are bringing your own ideas and recommendations to us, but I just wanted to share that because I thought that came through pretty strong with that last land use plan update. To get more people here, food. Seriously, this is maybe the biggest group I've ever seen, and there isn't even food. But if we start to be intentional about trying to reach out to people more, I mean, it's kind of funny, but if you have food after work, people might show up.
Lobster.
Whatever it takes. I was thinking nothing but cakes, but
No, so what I've said in the past is we need to have beer. If you have pizza and beer, people will show up. Nobody has taken me up on that yet, though.
It may lead to some
Something
interesting
else,
discussions.
well, it's not for y'all.
Yeah.
It's
No,
for
it's
them.
Well,
That's right.
the comments will be.
So
Yeah, people don't want
if I could weigh in as well, I too am a data person and I love the plans. And the reason I love the plans is because the plans were created with a substantive amount of public input, a lot of reviews by the planning board, a lot of reviews by multiple parties. There's a lot of public outreach and the town council. And that really is kind of your playbook to, whether it's the transportation plan or it's, some of our zoning maps, there's just a lot of good feedback, but they are only living documents, and where they were created maybe 5 years ago, there's a lot different dynamics going on in the park system or so forth like that. So that early warning of what is council thinking, we haven't had a process where the council looks at large projects, sends it to the planning board for comment and review, and then sends it back to council. Carrie does that, but we haven't done that with Morrisville because we look at it more like the public looks at it, the planning board, or, the applicant works with staff, and then planning board, and then town council. So, maybe there's ways to improve that for certain types of projects. But we don't want to necessarily turn ourselves into spinning, projects around. But the communication is definitely something we can improve upon and maybe have more casual understanding of values and beliefs for the town. And those plans are a starting point, but also just conversations and public feedback opportunities. Maybe now that we have a lot more restrictions lessened from the COVID, we have more opportunities to interact with ourselves and the public. So I'm looking forward to that aspect. I've kind of missed everybody the last couple of years. But it is something that we do need to work on and not take for granted. Although the council's been consistent for 4 to 6 years, it doesn't mean that we have the same beliefs from day one until 6 years later. We are evolving as well and understanding and appreciating the town. Related to some of the prioritization and questions, I really think that there are certain by right developments, like the mayor said, where certain areas we have by design allowed for more intense use. However, there's a lot of power in rezoning, and some of the areas that you consider as a planning board are redevelopment opportunities that don't quite fit by right. And please take the time and discussion opportunity to see if there's additional adjustments that are needed in the form of conditions that you think align with the values of the town or align a little bit better with current thinking. Because we also look at conditions for those situations as kind of giving a more up-to-date alignment with affordable housing or certain kinds of traffic impacts that we're seeing in the current time frame. So it's an ongoing dialogue for me and a listening opportunity as well.
I think it should be an ongoing dialogue. I wouldn't want to have a situation where, an application is coming before us, but the council is going to look at it and weigh in a little bit. That would kind of destroy our independence. And, the 5 of us are up there, all of us bring different voices. Although, as Tim said, we usually vote in unison, and the staff always tells us what the staff recommendation is. But I think it would be helpful, just like general guidelines, that the council is really looking for, like we discussed, a few minutes ago. We could look at a plan for the TOD, and we know that's going to be a densely populated area just by the zoning of it. But how will that affect other things? And is it something that the council is looking at down the road? Just, general guidance that doesn't really give us direction, but just gives us a little bit of guidance about where the council's mind is at. And then we go and do our thing, instead of like a back and forth,
So can I ask a question? Thank you, Ken. Can I ask you a question about, so I don't want to talk, we don't have to talk about one particular project, but since you brought up, town center or TOD, would it be, because we've talked about TOD and town center for years and multiple meetings, and so do we need to kind of give you an update of what council, do you get updates of what council, agreed to, or where we're headed, or where our thought process is when you're, okay. Okay.
I don't know how the rest of us feel.
I think you're right. Those are a couple of areas where staff has done a tremendous job of just laying it out and continuously reminding us to say, hey, these 3 areas, they've been discussed, they're zoned for this. This is kind of the vision. I think that's been a success, really, where we've had those things. The debates and discussions we've had have been more micro. They've been, focused on safety, and I think that's where, this road or that road, and that's kind of where we are. I think some of the challenges that at least I face sometimes is that when we consider an individual development that's outside of those things that we're looking for rezoning, you're making those recommendations with the blinders on. So, hey, we want to build this new building here with X amount of houses and X amount of parking, and what we don't have view to, and maybe you guys don't either, is what's the development for schools around that area? What's the long-term? And that's maybe outside of the purview, but it does affect the decision. And when you don't have that, you default to no information, there's nothing there. And so, you can't go to high school in Morrisville, right? I mean, it's it's kind of one of those things that,
Well, soon. Well, actually, we do
When?
have a high school. We do have a high school.
There's I know that, but I mean, yeah, you get the sense, okay.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. So I hear all that, and thank you for that. I will tell you one thing, and I think the mayor said it, and maybe Vicky said it, and I'm going to make sure I say it too. I think the idea that we're not all thinking the same way is really good. So I would not want to stifle. Here's a memo from council that says this is what we're thinking. I don't want you to go, okay, and we really do. We can't. It takes a village, right? We all see things from different vantage points, have different perspectives, and that's what makes the end product so good. That we all offered whatever we offered to massage that project so that it's the best for the citizens, not only today but well into the future. So just want to make sure I said that too. Go ahead. You have 2 cents.
But I think with Liz's and everyone's input here, I think getting out, I think a lot of people act and are more boisterous in regards to their comfort areas. Like, for instance, you have the police and fire department go out, which was a really good turnout, over at, I thought, at Starbucks. If you had something like that coffee, conversation, and community, be in their space and kind of get a feel. You can't do it. We all can't do it because you all flood in, you scare them. But if there's 1 or 2 people out there and just did something along that arena, I think that would be good. One other idea, and this is years ago in another state when I was involved with community planning. One city, a pretty large city, in the West Coast, they actually invited the developers up for a meeting to show what they're doing and what they were proposing. And it was actually not that it would have to be this way, but a competition is what's going to hit our core, both in planning what we have to review, but also city council that would bring up these items, and then people would actually be able to see it. And I think residents would definitely would want to do that. That's just my thought. And the last thing, and I can say this because I was an economics major, data's good, but I've gone to the dark side a little bit because people's perception and what they experience every day, you could feed them data all you want. And I think it's very important, but I think also you want to try and address what their visual and their perceptual needs are with some of these things. That's it. I am done.
Well, I will say, I mean, the planning department has had developers come in several times in the past to try to talk about, and they do it on a regular basis, but even in a more official capacity to kind of talk about those type of items.
No, I'd mean
You were
open
saying to have the public to
come in.
these things.
Yes, I think the planning does great with everything they do, but I think
I just wonder how many would be willing to do that just because they might think it'd give away some sort of competitive, information.
competition's good.
So, getting to that, what struck me when we were talking about this is meeting people where they're at to
Yes.
make sure. And we did do that before the pandemic. We would go to different neighborhoods that had clubhouses and have meetings there. And I think one was outside. I remember being outside because they actually didn't have a
Doing it after
building.
the COVID, we never really
Yeah.
came back.
So
Maybe it's time to revisit.
yes, I totally
yeah.
agree. And I like the coffee and conversation with maybe not just, maybe coffee and conversation with the planning and zoning board, coffee and conversation.
It builds
People show
community.
up.
When you
Yeah,
sit-
they might. We'll have to
You
try it
can't
and see, right? We'll have to
Yeah,
try it.
You
absolutely.
can't have the whole planning and zoning board there.
No.
No,
As
no.
long
Well,
as you have less than a quorum.
everybody's got their
Yeah.
time constraints. If you pick
Well, I'm just thinking
yeah.
legally, but yeah.
But I think people would open up. I think if they're comfortable where they're at, and they know they have access, I think that's good.
Next Wednesday, where are you gonna be?
Somewhere, I'll find out why.
Where
So
were
we
you
have-
on the night of?
Where are you gonna have coffee?
Mont. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
He's
good.
always,
Mont.
Yeah.
But I just say, I mean, just go in, you don't have to pop, and just have a conversation, just see what type of feedback you get on that, because people are comfortable in those arenas. Here, when you bring them in, you see all these ugly, muggly faces, whether it's planning and zoning or council, and you're like, I don't know how to open this package. Where do I start?
Yeah,
With some of that?
so that's something I've worked on a lot too. I agree with you. I think you have to invite people. We talk about people don't show up. I think we have to invite them to show up. I think when they feel invited and they feel that connection to come in, it helps. So, I think with that's on us, each one of us too, by the way. Yeah.
And I think once they're in there,
Because
with
this
that-
room's intimidating.
it
I
is.
will
I
tell
mean,
you.
when you
Yeah,
come
it's-
in here,
stand up on that podium. And,
yeah. But I think the other part of it is when they do that and they come and they have a positive experience, they put it out to maybe 4, 5, 10 people, and now they have been the recruiters to participate
That's right.
in the government.
Can I comment on that as well? I think the world's changed a lot, so I watch town council meetings at home, and I like that I can sort on the agenda, and I can find the topic that we were talking about. And I go in, and that's where I get my understanding of where the council's thinking. That's also where I think a lot of the community also participates, whether it's our board or whether it's some other board, town council. People use that. They go in and they use it. They use Facebook, and I see quite often presentations. I see mayors everywhere from collecting recyclables to out at the parks, all of you I see at activities. So there's plenty of opportunities. I don't think that's what a lot of people like to do. So I think trying to give them more and more opportunities, there needs to be an understanding. Do they want to participate in that way? It seems a lot of electronic. We're very high tech here. People are very comfortable typing and sending their feedback. So maybe they need some response to it, but I don't necessarily think having people drawn into large crowds is the only option to
Well, I'm
get.
not saying large crowds. I'm saying crowds that's adaptable, and I think people I like books, not digital books. I like newspapers. I like to talk to people like this instead of saying, okay, let's Facebook and we Zoom or whatever we do. I think you can complement everything, but I think you just can't go one way or the other. You got to say, we make this whole variety of venues available.
But that's your personal opinion.
Yeah.
So when I talk to my neighbors, I can't speak from a data standpoint to bring that to a board. So I look for that professional collection of data or for it to come from somebody. So because you had coffee with 3 people can't necessarily change what was in a survey from my standpoint. And I think that's what we get into on the boards. Is we have data that represents X, Y, and Z. We're using that information because it went through 3 sets of data collection, and somebody on the board may feel that's not accurate. To me, I'm uncomfortable questioning that. If they did online, they did something in the town, they collected data, somebody gathered those 3 different points together, I'm not comfortable saying, well, I feel differently from that because I'm looking at the percentage of people that participated. So I think it's easy.
I think things complement each other. There is no one way. I think each thing's complement based on each individual's, and that's just my personal thought on it. There's no bullet yet. If there was, as Liz said, this could be all done. Yeah, but I think what you mentioned and what we all talked about in this is how do we best address people, because everybody's individual, appreciates different ways of learning things. Not just, but when anybody finds that bullet, it's going to be great.
I agree.
If I could add, when talking about resident engagement, and some people feel intimidated coming here, and maybe this is maybe not the best environment for people who are not used to speaking out. There's 2 examples of when we went to neighborhoods. That was like when Thornberry was coming around, and that was an outdoor thing by the pool, and that got lots of engagement, and that's because some people were pushing back, and it's not always about pushing back, but if we can encourage the developers to reach out to neighborhoods earlier. Alta Morrisville, which is now Alta Ren, is another example. There's lots of resident engagement. A lot of those were Cary people, but we met with them and we tried to make the project better. And it did make it better. So we can maybe try to get back towards encouraging developers to reach out to neighborhoods and affected communities earlier, and then it's on them, and then we can attend and learn early in the process as well. And that's a little less formal, but then they can maybe make some adjustments and try to make a better product earlier in the process. So that's a possible.
So maybe just to switch topic a little bit. So we've made a couple of asks for council around shaping priorities, and maybe we take on a first pass at that around what that is, and then also visibility around strategy and some of the ancillary things that impact the work that we do. Let's turn it around. How can we be more effective for you in the decisions you make? I mean, what are we not doing? What do we need to do more of, less of? What's your take?
Or are we doing it just?
Or are we doing it perfect, as Lee might say?
If I could take a quick shot at that, what I would like to see is for y'all to feel empowered and know that you can make a difference and share why you think this is good or bad as part of the development, and push back on the developers and ask them for more early. And just a sort of a laundry list of things that I think generally the council has been interested in is sustainability, affordable housing, maybe work, play housing, stuff like that. Alter Morrisville was supposed to have that.
Yeah, as I said, that never happened, did it?
It's probably, a couple of those units are probably supposed to be doing that. I'm not sure if they really are.
What can you,
Yeah, dig into
what is that? work
Alter
plan?
Ren is,
Huh?
Alter Ren.
Alter Ren, ideally, it's almost like a retail shop, like a lawyer's office or something, but there's also they live there, like on the second floor or
Like the
something
old
like that.
colonial shops, somebody living down
Something like that.
upstairs.
Yeah, there
Um,
was like 7 units or 8 that were supposed
Yeah,
to
it
be.
wasn't much. But if you guys can try to get us some affordable housing, some more tree preservation, just nicer things early in the process. I'm trying to think of what other things that, yeah, the TIAs are always going to happen, traffic impact analyses. Just try to, what's your vision for the town? Say that every time you're coming to a decision. This doesn't match our vision. Like when it came to the McCrimmon Parkway, we didn't want a big Amazon box like they have in Garner. We said, no, that's not what we want. So we're getting something better. It's going to have office, it's going to have industrial, but it'll also have places for the residents, all the residents, not just those who can get in the key fob to their pool. So I think that's something that I'm interested in. The council seems to be interested in. When developers come in, it's not just for their residents or their office goers. Try to make it now for everyone. Like the McCrimmon Corridor should be a place where anyone can go, even if you don't work there or live there. That's, I think, our shared vision for the redevelopment that's happening in the small parcels that are left. There's been a lot of talk of the missing middle. People can get into an apartment here, then a townhome, then there isn't the 2 and 3 bedroom homes that people can stay in town as their kids go through middle school and high school. So if there's any opportunity to help the developers to do that instead of more apartments, I think that is what the residents seem to be looking for. They want to be able to live here and continue to live here.
Do we really, why don't we, I mean, we don't really have a good, I don't think we cover that well in the UDO. I mean, we've got somebody's building duplexes on the edge of town, and they're not as high end as they could be. I mean, I think part of that problem is that those tend to hit the lowest end of the market. I think the missing middle is maybe not necessarily cheap because it's cheaply built. It's maybe, I don't know. I mean, do we have like in these, I don't know if we really haven't covered the UDO to have like a 3 resident type building that is nicer and not trying to necessarily go to the lowest common denominator. But
Yeah, I mean, you can have less expensive to build, that's, but it's still maybe not affordable. So that's the thing. People are always going to say, well, you can make it nicer, but then people can't afford it. Even if you don't make
that's
it
a balance.
nice, it's not really going to be affordable anyway. That's just where we live.
So I'm going to do the time check. We have 14 minutes because I know you have a long meeting tonight. So I just want to follow on to the question about, what we need. I do think you're doing a fabulous job. I do love reading your minutes or watching your meetings to hear the conversation. And I would agree, you keep that up. Push back on the things you want to push back on and highlight the things you think we should be highlighting in these development applications that come before you. And the other thing I would say, and I've been saying this for years, and I don't know how this affects you all just yet, but from a planning perspective, I think our biggest opportunity moving forward now is redevelopment opportunity. We have lots of development here in town, maybe not so much residential, because for many years, Steve talked about the fact that we have like 55% commercial. I don't know, it's always moving. It's like 60-40, 55-45. But when I first moved here, it was 80% commercial and 20% residential. And there was a huge focus, because that's what the community wanted, on bringing residential development here into the town of Morrisville. Folks did not like that percentage, that unbalanced percentage. So that's why you saw a focus on residential for so many years, and as a mix of residential as was possible. Everything is a balance. I think we all fall short. I think we all have to keep working to get whatever to be perfect. I'm not sure that's possible, but we all need to keep working at it. But I will tell you, the redevelopment opportunity in the commercial part of town, I think, is going to be huge over time. So there's a lot of commercial development here in town that was built 30 plus years ago. It's one-story flex space. When we talk about the home of Crimin area, my focus when we talked about those 400 acres that were landlocked, my focus was to make sure they were at the highest and best use. That I did not want to see any more trucking companies or flex space, or cement plants, So that redevelopment opportunity is where I know our staff is focused on that, but I think that's something we all need to be focused on when we talk about our planning and all the processes we go through, land use planning and everything. So keep that in mind, please, as you move forward.
I read the minutes from the planning board, and I love the comments, because that gives me some insight as to your perspective and values and so forth. But when you explain how you arrived at something, that helps me understand you as members of the public. So, you're closer to the data, you're closer to the plans. The public has access, but it's not so easy to find those plans on the website. We still struggle with that search engine, but you are very informed, and I really do appreciate with rezonings when you recommend conditions. That is a starting point, and usually we don't change a lot of those conditions. If we do, we're trying to make them clearer or a little more impactful. But I think that each of you is doing a great job. The prioritization, I do like the idea of maybe giving us insight as to what those 7 priorities are, so that we understand what your kind of foundational values are. And then maybe there could be an exercise where we share some of those values. But the council gets to weigh in on capital projects on a regular basis, and we're constantly scoring and doing a lot of those exercises. Maybe there's an opportunity to share some of those results from, the Jeannie, surveys that she does of council, to make sure the planning board sees some of those results, because those do share what the council is prioritizing for the town from time to time.
Yeah, thank you, Vicki. It just struck me that you all maybe need to do a retreat. We do a retreat once a year. I mean, you don't have to do a 3-day retreat like we do, but maybe take the time to do a retreat and touch on some topics that you can delve into. Because I think it's important to, we go to retreats so we understand each other. I mean, obviously we talk about topics, but it's also about understanding each one's perspective. And we have 7 different perspectives, and, understanding each other and how we come together and compromise and work together. And So maybe that's, I don't know if planning and zoning board's ever done a retreat. And then the other thing, I do agree, I would love for you to all to talk about and think about how we come together again and in a joint meeting and what, maybe it's a specific topic we talk about. Tonight was purposely just to kind of be a, free for all, kind of what's on your mind. Let's see where it goes. But, maybe we have joint meetings and talk about, and we've done that. We have done that. We've had joint meetings where we were specifically talking about works. Yeah. Yes. Yes. So keep that in mind too. But, all right, Steve, you have thoughts?
No, I mean, I think
And
just,
we'll wrap it up.
no, yes, I do have thoughts. I think, I think that the main thing is just to look at your relationship with the council as a partnership, to push yourself to be creative and innovative. We're a very innovative town. We're one of the most innovative towns in the state. We are the number one. We just got recently ranked by Wallet Hub as the best place to live. Everybody's looking at Morrisville now. We're all very, very lucky that we're leading this great, great town. I like to call it a city. The mayor always says, "Why do you always call it a city?" I don't know. But the bottom line is that I think, I love this idea of a retreat, getting around the region and looking at different cities and how they're doing the development. Come back to us with different ideas of what you think we could do. The whole live, work, play thing is really working, in Raleigh, Durham, other towns. And I think we can get really creative so that when you guys come back, you could say, we have a different idea of something. I think the earlier we can do that, our staff is very innovative, very creative. We can do development differently. We can come up with something unique, something that, and so that's all I would ask, is that in the remaining development of Morrisville, that we have a chance to do something very different and very unique that will bring more people here. Anyway, I just thank you, for all the work that you do. It's such an important committee, and, look forward to continue to work with you all.
I have a yes and. I really like the idea of the retreat. We used to gather all the different resident advisory committees together for like a social. And I think there's lots to be gained from the cross-pollination of that kind of things. The Smart City Committee has been doing some stuff with MESC, the Environmental Committee. Which committee or committees do you think you guys would cross-pollinate well with in your role? Parks? So maybe set up a joint meeting with them or something, or have one or two of you attend their meetings, ask them to come to yours. I think that would be a way to we want more of our residents talking to each other and building community and sharing ideas. So anything that we can do to try to make that happen. And I see we have a member of Parks right over there, which is nice.
Nobody has food. Nobody has food. All right, we have 5 minutes, so we'll give you back your 5 minutes so you can regroup and maybe take a break and go back up. But thank you all very much for not only having this opportunity tonight, but for what you do every month and for all the time you put in before you show up here at your meetings. Thank you. I know it's a lot of work. I know it is. So, because we get the same plans you get, so I know you do a lot. So thank you. I appreciate that very much. So Leah, I'll let you have the last word.
I would say the same thing. I appreciate the time, and thanks. And let's convene up at the top. And thank you, Mayor.
Thank you all.
Thank you all very much. I think I've already signed up.
Family. Deanna's growing up.
Yeah.
How old is he? 8. Oh my God. All of mine are out of the house now. She comes up, I'll shoot you a note. Where are you working? Same place?
Liz, you guys
Are you
need
still
any
there?
help with anything?
I'm kind of taking a little time.
It's taking a long time. Oh, yeah, me too. I'm semi-retired. I'm doing a lot of governmental relations work.
Yeah, that's good.
4 years.
I'm only in charge of food and beverage.
Knows what that might have been.
But just let me know. I'll sign up tonight, so you.
Look at that. I was just gonna make sure he just wanted to make sure it was that it wouldn't start playing.
We'd have to do a lot of these.
I'm not sure if it has an
fun
audio.
back products.
Oh, I guess we need to put the agenda up too, don't we?
And so when you go to that, you know that you're gonna click on
Yeah, the PDF.
whatever you gotta click on. And
Yeah. Cool deal. All right. You're a rock star. Thank you.
If everyone can take their seats, we'll proceed with the meeting. Well, hold on. Oh, you're there. There's no changes to the agenda, correct?
No, Chairman, no
Okay,
changes
okay.
to the agenda.
I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. This is the agenda. The agenda. All right. All in favor? Aye. Carries unanimously. We also do need to adopt the minutes. Has anyone looked at the minutes and seen any changes to make?
No, no changes.
Seeing no changes, I will accept a motion.
Motion to accept the minutes?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Do we have anyone? We have quite a few people here. So first, anybody that would like to make a public comment of any kind needs to make sure that you have filled out your name, address, everything on the sign-in sheet in the back. So if you have not done so, please do that. And so if we have anyone that has a general comment, not about any of the two items tonight, now would be the time to make that comment. So if you would, please state your name and address, and then.
Susan Nguyen. My address is 1216 Morrisville Lane, Morrisville. I was at the last meeting speaking about the effects of development on our communities, such as school overcrowding. The residents hear about TLD and like BB Theater possibly being knocked down for apartments, and we're all very wary.
Well, understand. So we're going to have a separate comment for that. So this is general comments that are not pertaining to that.
Oh,
item.
I'll get to that.
Yeah.
It will. It's very general, and we don't want to lose what we have. With the school draft, there were comments submitted on the second draft that were, a lot of them were related to the planning and zoning and the board. So I want to read you guys those comments. So they're just, you hear them. I just want you guys to hear them, be aware of the public perception of the board and the planning committee. look, please excuse some of the language on these. I didn't write them. I'm just
I
the
will
messenger.
say, this is a public forum, it's being recorded, so if there is any
It's not that bad.
language that is questionable, I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't speak it into the record.
Right. Number 16. Oh, this is 7 of the top 20 comments on draft 2 of the school board weren't even about the school. It was about the planning and zoning board and the town of Morrisville. So number 16, email Morrisville's ringmaster, Satish Garamella, tell him Providence Place wants to slow down on high-density housing. Tell him too much high density hurts Morrisville families. Tell him about traffic. Number 14, sorry, I didn't write this. I blame the Morrisville Planning and Zoning Board. Planning and Zoning Board is clueless. Number 10, Providence Place was sold out by Morrisville Town Council member Satish Garamella. He supports developers at the expense of Morrisville families being kicked out of Parkside. When's it time set up to Satish Garamella? This was made before the election. So that's where a lot of this is coming from. Number 6, let's be honest. I blame the Morrisville Planning and Zoning Board. They didn't plan and did plenty of upzoning. Number 1, 8, and 15. Let's face it, Morrisville is high in demand and developments will happen. Vote out Satish Garamella and Liz Johnson on Tuesday, 11/7 to slow it down. So I just want you to be aware of how the public feel about all these apartments and all these students being brought in and established communities being squeezed out. Like Providence Place and Kitts Creek are being kicked to another school. We're protesting, we're losing. I just want you to be aware of the issues. I listened to the discussion, and I appreciate you guys trying to figure out a way to reach the public. There's a huge disparity in what you guys do versus what the public is hearing and seeing, as you could hear on, these comments. They don't know what's going on. They just see the effects of what's happening to them, and they're upset about it. So I do appreciate you guys saying that you're going to reach out, and I hope somehow the residents hear what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other general public comments not pertaining to the 2 items on the agenda? Well, you need to have signed in, and then you need to state your name and address for the record. Please go ahead.
Okay. My name is Shivanand Bhatt. I am resident of 332 Carolina Street. So this Thornbury community is newly built. We have recently, lot of traffic issues. People are cutting through Town Hall Drive, through Carpenter Fire Station Drive. Sometimes people are driving like crazy. I think it is, speed limit is 20 miles or so, but people are driving like in 45, 50 miles speed. It is really big issue now, safety. And there is no speed limit sign, and there is no speed bump or something. I have my, residence for, we are here, and we would request as soon as possible to put the speed sign and also the speed bump in Carolina Street. So it is very necessary, and it is very, safety of our kids. Last 2-3 weeks back, my son, in 1 minute, he just saved. God saved him. Otherwise, something wrong, could happen over there. So that is my concern.
So I will just interject. Someone was here with similar complaints last time, and they were going to work with the town manager or the assistant town manager. That would definitely be for those items. That would be where you would need to talk to somebody in the public works or in the town management. So, thank you.
Hello. I was here last time, so we are from the same community. I did receive some response from Kitty almost after 2 months. We wanted some expedited action, right? Because this cannot be waiting. And when I got a response, it looked to us, it's more bureaucratic. It has to go through the HOA, it has to go, there is a whole process document which was sent.
Right. Yeah, those
Right,
things are
so,
done. Yeah.
When safety of your residents is at stake, the bureaucratic tapes needs to be, cut, and some action has to be taken, right? We are talking about safety and lives. So I understand the process you all have, that's really appreciated, but some expedited and urgent action should be taken. That is all we want to do.
I certainly appreciate that. Unfortunately, this particular board, we really don't have any visibility into that at all. That you would need to speak to the town management or the town council.
Okay.
I mean, well, we as we talked about before, we recommend things to the town council. We just aren't able to do any of those items, unfortunately.
Okay. So then probably we'll route that to the right forum.
Right. I mean, I think you just get a faster response if you would just continue to work with the town management and the public works.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Seeing none, we will move on to number 7. Town Manager Michelle Stiegel presenting.
You just gave me a promotion.
Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry. Planning Director. A few more years.
So thank you, Chairman Langston. Obviously, Chris is not here this evening, so I'm presenting this item for him. This is the Town Center Plan Development Rezoning. You first heard this item at a public comment session at your October 12th meeting. Did have just a couple new pieces of information for you following that meeting. There was a question from the Planning and Zoning Board at the meeting about the number of units at the Broadstone Trailside Apartment. I think that was requested just for some context. So that development, which is the multifamily at the corner of McCrimmon and Church Street, that has 263 units in it. There has also been one change to the application in terms of the proposed conditions. There is one additional proposed condition, really just a clarifying item. It references a prior alternative equivalent compliance approval for the Morrisville Library. As part of some of the title work, there were some questions about what the status of that approval would be if this rezoning was approved. So that just goes to clarify and document that that approval would stand and continue to be valid. That is the only change to the application and the proposed conditions by the applicant. The public comment session on this item does remain open, and it is scheduled for potential action tonight. I will note that the applicant team is in the audience as well if you have any additional questions for them.
Thank you. So for the board, are there any other questions? Tim, you?
Sorry, just reviewing I think we had a question around this, things we're doing on safety for this. So the application for it, if I remember correctly, this would impact Town Hall Drive and the fire station. And so I don't know if there was anything that we were planning based on those comments to ensure access from the fire station out. Right now, there's plenty of times during the day where you can't get out of that road. Adding more apartments to it, more traffic would increase that problem. That's one of the concerns. So I had that, see if that was being addressed in any way. And the second was with the addition of housing units, is there going to be any other traffic lights or stop signs in some of those throughput areas that we would be adding, in support of this? So thinking about down in Glen, Carolina Drive, all of those areas where folks are cutting through, I am concerned about the safety issue with the pools that are there and the kids that play in the area. If there's anything that we're going to be doing about that.
So following the last meeting, planning staff did follow up with our fire department regarding the question of access from fire station number 1. Fire department indicated that they didn't have any concerns there, and Chief Lizinski is here if you would like to add anything or have any additional comments on that.
Good evening. We have no concern with the additional development at Town Center. We've added a ton of technology that provides us access out of the station at the intersection, traffic preemption. So we have no additional concern with the additional development. We're pretty comfortable with getting out and responding to calls.
Thank you.
And then I believe you also asked about stop signs and traffic lights. No, none were recommended by the TIA. We haven't gotten into the detail of stop signs. I think that would come more with the site plan, but no traffic lights were recommended with the TIA or are planned with phase 1.
I had a question about dog relief area. I didn't see anything in the design, and there could potentially be 150 dogs there. Was there a plan other than using the stage area?
I don't know that we have gotten into that level of detail yet, as we are at the rezoning stage, but I will ask this thing to, well, that would be the town green. We could take that into consideration and look at that as we continue to work on, final plans for development of that town green area.
Rick?
No, nothing. Pass.
So any other discussion, anything else? Do we have a motion or someone willing to read the, okay, so it's not a very long action item. Do we have the statement? Is it in the?
It's there, but I mean.
You should have a draft motion
Sorry,
for both items.
All right, okay. Let's see one for that. Sorry. Oh, there we go. All right, so yeah, so this is another one we need to read all this out. I mean, this needs to be stated.
The statement of reasonableness would be to be signed after the meeting. And then you have draft motions. You just need to fill in the blanks for or against.
Okay, so do we have a motion to?
I'll make a motion. I find a proposed zoning map amendment to be consistent with the town of Morrisville's comprehensive plan, and I hereby make a motion to recommend approval of ordinance 2023-359-0 of the Morrisville Town Council approving a Main Street plan development rezoning for Town Center Phase 1, approximately 16.6 acres of property located northeast of the intersection of Town Hall Drive and Carolina Street to the Main Street Plan Development Zoning District with the conditions proposed in the petitioner's application. Further, I find that the proposed zoning map amendment reasonable, consistent with the comprehensive plan, and is in the public interest because 1, the requested zoning map amendment initiates the implementation of the Town Center Suburban Plan as established by the adopted 2021 land use plan. 2, the requested zoning map amendment matches the 2021 land use plan use designation town center and will allow for a vibrant mix of uses near Morrisville's historic crossroads that create a destination and focal point for the community as called for by the plan. 3, the requested zoning map amendment implements the 2021 land use plan key actions items 24, incorporating a central public gathering space into future town center development.
And I should pause. We did not close the public meeting. My apologies. I screwed this up. Do we have anyone else that has a comment on this item? I don't believe we do. If that's the case, I will close the public comments session. Thank you. If we can go back to that, my apologies. So the motion as read, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So it carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Do we want to move? Does anybody need a break before we move into 8? Rick? Good?
I can hold.
Okay. So we will move on to item 8, the proposed major amendment to Park West Village mixed use.
Sorry. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Board. I am Thomas Lloyd, and I am a planner too with the town. I don't think I've had the pleasure of coming before y'all except once before. So it's good to be here. It's good to be here with you all, and I will be presenting on the Park West Village Plan Development Major Modification. Let me get this where it needs to be. Okay, so the applicant of this modification is Casto Southeast Realty Services. And as you all know, the current zoning of this site is mixed-use plan development. That zoning will not be changing. They are simply modifying the zoning that they have now, the plan development zoning that they have now. And in that proposed modification, they will be demolishing the existing movie theater as well as 2 additional commercial retail buildings. And this is a total of 64,804 commercial square feet. They will be redeveloping that into 27,700 square feet of retail, 21,000 square feet of office, and an additional 312 multifamily units. They will also be doing a redesign of the outdoor open space plaza. It's important to note that they are proposing that 7% or 22 of those additional 312 units will be designated as affordable housing. So the total acreage of the site is 106.83 acres. And its current use, as you know, is a mixed-use shopping center, and it is within the corporate limits. Just to get into a little bit of background in terms of zoning of the surrounding area, to the north here, you see that you have Community Activity Center, and this is consisting of existing commercial and office. There's also some high-density residential here. To the east, there is Community Activity Center as well, which is also existing commercial and office. And then to the south, you have the railroad, high-density residential, low-density residential, and then open space here that consists of some of the golf course. Then to the west here, you have Community Activity Center, and this is existing commercial as well. So we'll get into what the future land use map shows this area as. and it shows this area as Regional Activity Center. And in terms of the redevelopment of the area, this is the red line here is the overall site. And then the yellow highlighted portion here shows the areas that are being redeveloped. So you have the movie theater right here, you have the open space plaza here, and then you have an additional out parcel down here where they will also be adding some apartments. So here are the existing conditions. You have the movie theater, you have the 2 retail buildings here. I put Bad Daddy's as a call out here because everybody knows where Bad Daddy's is and where Kilwins is. You have Bristol Creek Drive over here as well as Village Marketplace. And the demolition plan shows everything that's in black here. All of these buildings are what are set to be demolished, as well as the open space to be reoriented. And then the sketch plan, this right here is the proposed mixed-use building. There will be multifamily as well as, or on upper floors, and then commercial on the bottom floor. The revised outdoor plaza is shown here, and then there's the R8 multifamily building down here. We'll zoom in a little bit just so you can see the plan a little bit better and a little bit more detail. There are also conceptual renderings. I will scroll through these, but I will leave the talking about these to the applicant. They actually have a short video as well that they're going to talk over while they're showing these renderings. But I will scroll through them so everybody can see them. All right, so you might be asking, what is a major modification to a planned development district? So much like the town center has its own planned development district, we're kind of doing a similar thing here, except it's a little bit different because this is an existing planned development district. So anytime an applicant wants to modify a previously approved planned development district, they have to go through this process. So when they're doing this, they have to resubmit their plan development narrative, and they also have to resubmit their plan development site plan for any changes that they're looking to do, their sketch plan. So to be clear, if this major amendment is approved, Park West Village would be able to demolish that 64,804 square feet of retail and commercial, and they would be able to replace it with the 27,700 square feet of retail, 21,000 square feet of office, and up to 312 multifamily dwelling units. So this approval will authorize the modified sketch plan, as well as the modified development standards and the modified conditions attached. Just to be clear, if this were approved, they still would have to go through the site plan and construction plan process with staff. So in the next few slides, I'll go through some of the unique development standards that are a little bit different. For the most part, for these permitted uses, and I know y'all probably can't see that up there, I'll try to zoom in a little bit. Really, the permitted uses aren't changing. A lot of this is just clarification because when the original narrative was approved, it was back in 2008. So we had a different zoning ordinance back then than what we have now in the UDO. So a lot of these uses were really just different names. So this is just kind of bringing everything, up to what our current code says. And so it is in compliance with that and is congruent with that. It says down here that hotel and motel is new. That is not a new use. They just simply moved it to a different area in the narrative. But if you look at these different designations for multifamily, before it was just multifamily apartment. It wasn't less than 50 and greater than 50, but our current UDO has that. The same thing for the private entertainment facility, indoor and outdoor. That was not a designation that we had previously, and they just had it, here as including the theater and the cinema for the showing of movies. But now that we have a new designation, they don't have to have that anymore. And then also we've added some different types of, retail uses in our UDO now, and they're just bringing that into compliance. As far as prohibited uses, they are being extremely clear that crematoriums, stone cutting and monument sales, tire capping and retreading, and vehicle towing services will not be allowed. They're being very clear with that because those are uses in our UDO that are allowed in an MUPD. So they're just showing it as prohibited uses here so that, everybody's clear that that is not allowed in their MUPD. So as far as the parking goes, the required parking with this modification for this area is 561 spaces. They have 904 spaces because they're using the spaces of the greater site, and it is an existing shopping center, so there is a ton of spaces out there that they have access to for this. And in terms of how their open space is changing, they're going from 20,700 square feet to 43,812 square feet. So as you can see in the renderings, or as you saw in the renderings, they're really trying to kind of have a more usable open space area. So that's kind of where some of that is coming into play. And then as far as the residential units go that are currently on site, currently there are 378, and those units consist of the Bristol Creek Apartments as well as the existing district lofts. And then for the proposed additional units, they are proposing a cap of 312 additional units with 690 capped. So as far as the general narrative changes go, if you look at the red line document, which I'm sure all of you were able to peruse, most of the changes were corrections to cross-references and clarifications that are no longer the case. So a lot of them were references to the previous zoning ordinance. And there were also just clarifications to make the narrative overall easier to understand for both staff and the applicant. In terms of transit, they will be providing one public transit stop internal to the site to accommodate public transportation in the town of Morrisville. So there will be an internal smart shuttle stop to the site. That's still kind of being coordinated, what that will ultimately look like with Town of Morrisville staff and Go Carry. But there is a condition that makes it clear that we do need at least one internal smart shuttle site. And the sketch plan also shows a proposed location at this time. There's also additional language on loading space standards. Previously, the narrative did not have loading space standards, but now it references the loading space standards that are found in the UDO. So that has been clarified. As far as dimensional requirements, there's some clarification that was made that, Park West Village is essentially seen as a zoning lot because it is, one cohesive development. So, they're not really subject to the internal lots are not subject to, normal setback requirements like a property would be. The video screens will be allowed provided that they are not visible from public streets and that no screen can be any higher than the surrounding buildings. So they're also just clarifying that there's no required building setbacks, and this was in accordance and a condition of the 2008 approval of Park West Village. And then there's some language that they added just to require that any amendment, whether it be minor or major, just follow the process that we have in the UDO for PD plans and agreements. They're also asking for some architectural deviations that are slightly different than the architectural standards that we have in the UDO. And part of that, is part of a plan development agreement. They kind of ask for some of those changes to be able to have a more unique and cohesive development. But I'll go into those now. Multifamily developments and mixed-use buildings with multifamily floors will comply with the UDO design requirements, but they have the option to comply with either the multifamily requirements or the mixed-use requirements of the UDO. They will be allowed to have high-quality, durable faux wood as a predominant wall material. That's a little bit different than what we typically require. Most of our predominant wall materials are brick and masonry in our general regulations. In the previous approval of this narrative, they were also allowed to have metal panels and call wall. So that will be carrying forward as well. For the primary materials within the fenestration, they are requiring that it be glass and that it may not be less than 50% of the individual tenant storefront area. So if you look at this right here, they're kind of showing what that fenestration area will be like, and what the expectation is for it to be no less than 50%. For the multi-story mixed use tenant facades, the facade area will be calculated a little bit differently than we typically do. It'll be based on the finished floor elevation base to the top of the facade and from demising wall to demising wall. So they're asking for this flexibility to give tenants the ability to create a more unique facade for their store. And then the glazing area within this area, it will also need to be, so that transparency will also need to be a minimum of 25% of the overall area of the tenant facade. So it's a little bit different than what our current regulations are for design, but they're asking for that to kind of do something a little different. For the design of the fenestration, it will comply with the UDO, except that the wall will be configured with 35% window and or doors, and it'll be measured from the lowest residential floor to the roof bearing line. And so the reason that is that they're trying to keep their percentages a certain percentage, and they want to have a parapet here that can screen all of the mechanical equipment. So they're asking for that flexibility just so that doesn't really, mess up any of their numbers. Oh, and to be clear, I didn't say this earlier, but the maximum height for this planned development modification is 75 feet. So I figured that might be a question that you all might have. For the coated brick and masonry, they are asking that they be permitted to coat or with stain or mineral silicate paint. So they are looking to be able to paint their brick and masonry, which typically in our UDO you aren't allowed to do that, but with it being a planned development, they're asking that they can have that artistic choice there, and that if it's coated, it would still count as the required facade material. And then they've also slightly changed the string lighting standards. Previously, the string lighting in Park West Village's planned development narrative was only restricted to the color white. Now they have a little bit more flexibility with that. So there's also some changes to their comprehensive sign plan. And one of them is that they are allowing murals. But to be, crystal clear, they still have to get their murals approved through the town of Morrisville's process. So they don't have just, carte blanche to do whatever they want with the murals. They'll still have to get it approved through planning. They're also asking that images cast onto surfaces or sidewalks adjacent to the tenant premises or individual businesses be allowed, provided that these images are not visible from Cary Parkway, Morrisville Parkway, or Chapel Hill Road. They're also changing it to where cabinet signs and signage on backer board is allowed, which was not previously the case. And then once again, they're allowing video screens internal to the site as long as they're not visible from public right-of-way. They may be used for live or recorded events, as well as advertising when not in use. So I'll get into some of the conditions, and I'm really only getting into the conditions that are changing. The first condition is just that, the development will be subject to the standards of the narrative and will be in substantial compliance with the plan development plan and sketch plan, which is Exhibit B attached to the ordinance. Sorry. All signs for the development shall comply with the comprehensive sign plan dated October 11th, 2023. And you might be asking, why is that not subject to a master sign agreement? So the reason it's not is because this was how this development was originally approved with their comprehensive sign plan back in 2008. So for the, the focus of, or for the point of just being consistent, we're doing it this way because that was how it was originally done. And we're just, really the comprehensive sign plan is not changing a ton. It's just kind of, bringing a few things up to speed from where it previously was. For the building elevations, there's a condition here that, they'll comply with the architectural requirements as found in the narrative. And that's the narrative dated October 16, 2023. So really this condition isn't changing. It's just getting rid of the old architectural requirements and being clear that they're going to be subject to the new architectural requirements. So there's also a condition that's clarifying that, they will be subject to payment in lieu for parkland dedication, and that'll be calculated based on the number of dwelling units that are constructed. So that shall be paid, by the time of construction approval or building permit approval. So, we're not charging that now. It's not that we don't want that for the parks. It's just that, some of those fees may be subject to change. So it'd be, more appropriate to collect those, once it's actually being built, if it were to be built. For 12 and 13, these are really just minor clarifications, changing the cross references to the zoning ordinance to the UDO, which is the current one. And then this condition is just putting a cap that, the most multifamily units they can build at Park West Village is 690. The current cap's 380. So this is just changing that to 690. And just to be clear, those units are also based on a trip generation letter that they were required to submit as a part of this. And let's see. So this condition right here is based on the affordable housing condition. And this is just asking, or it's not asking, it's making it to where, it has to happen. It's a requirement that 7% of those new residential units will be affordable housing. And that is defined as 80% of the AMI for Raleigh, North Carolina, which would be Wake County's 80% AMI. So that's pretty standard language that we use. And the rent would be for a period, the restriction would be for a period of 15 years, which would commence upon the first certificate of occupancy for that project. So this is pretty standard to what some of the other rezoning conditions that y'all have probably seen in the past. Alta is an example if you remember reviewing that. But it's that 80% AMI. And once again, that's 22 units of what they're proposing. And this one's a little bit different. They're also asking that, some of these units could be provided, these additional units could be provided as age-restricted units. They're not necessarily, I guess, planning on that right now, but they want to have the opportunity to do that in the future if they want to go that route. And if you have any questions for them on that, I would just defer to them on that. And then the last condition is that the Smart Shuttle stop will be located within the development as shown on the sketch plan dated September 27th, 2023, and will also be subject to adjustments at the time of site plan approval. So for our recommendation, staff is recommending approval for the following reasons. And the first reason is that the modification is consistent with the future land use plan. The future land use plan shows this area as regional activity center, which lists preferred uses as office, retail, shopping centers, restaurants, lodging and hospitality, mixed-use development, and multifamily residential. The proposed modification provides a balanced and integrated mix of these uses within the MUPD. The second reason we're recommending it is that the modification encourages a design that fosters attractive destinations where people visit for an experience, and that is a key consideration for RAC designated areas in our future land use plan. Kind of building on that, it also seeks to create more outdoor dining, seating, and more usable open space areas. The third reason is that the proposed plan development modification provides a smart shuttle connection internal to the site. This was a key consideration for RAC designated areas in the future land use future land use plan. And then the fourth reason is that the requested plan development modification provides privately developed affordable housing as called for by key action item 11 in the land use plan. So obviously this action item is before you, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. The applicant is also in the audience if you would like to see their video and hear their talk at this time.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, I think at this point we should probably watch their video, in my opinion, and then we can go public comment and we can then. That may help inform some of the public comments also.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nil Ghosh. I'm an attorney with the Morningstar Law Group in Durham, and I'm representing CASTA for this rezoning. I want to start first by thanking not only Thomas, but the entire planning department for their guidance on this project. It's been a long road. Obviously, Park West Village is an important economic center to the town, and considering the uncertainty caused by the pandemic, especially to brick and mortar locations, the center is doing very well, but there have been some losses. The movie theater is still open for now, but the original operator did not reopen after the pandemic. So currently there is no tenant. And instead, the ownership has hired an operator to keep the theater going, and it operates the theater at a loss. I think it's obvious, but I'll go ahead and state it. They're not going to continue to do that indefinitely. The theater is most likely going to stop operating regardless of this rezoning. But that's just the catalyst for this rezoning. It's not the reason. If the theater were still going strong, maybe we wouldn't be here today, but we would be here eventually. Park West Village is a vibrant mixed-use center currently, but it is aging. And in order to keep the center viable and competitive in the long term, to be able to compete with, like the Fenton and South Point, North Hills, places like that, the center needs to be revamped to some degree, and the owners are eager to reinvest in the center to keep Park West Village a destination in the heart of Morrisville. While this technically is a rezoning of the entire center, as was mentioned by staff, most of the changes in the narrative and zoning documents really are changes to reflect current UDO language and provisions. There is no real change in the types of uses that would be allowed within the center, but we are requesting an increase in the total number of residential units. Currently, the zoning limits it to no more than 380 units. This rezoning would increase the total allowable units to 690. I think the real meat of the changes is reflected in the sketch plan. As drawn, the sketch plan would allow the demolition of about 65,000 square feet of existing commercial space and that would be replaced with a mix of retail, office, and residential units. The other major change is the redesign of the outdoor plaza. What Casto's trying to do is create more of an outdoor venue with lawn space, a screen, things like that to make it more of a gathering or events area. And they will be adding another transit stop for the Smart Shuttle, in addition to the existing transit stop for the Go Carry route internal to the site. On balance, these changes still keep the total trip generation at or under the traffic generation numbers of the current zoning. So, stated another way, there is no expected increase in the overall traffic. And I think the other good news about that is that this center was built years ago, and all the road improvements it was required to build were built a long time ago. So this rezoning actually is not an increase in intensity, but a reimagination of the space for a more mixed-use format and for more open space. I could go on, but I want to bring up Mr. Tom Lowell, who is with Casto, the ownership group, to speak a little to the vision. He has a visual that he will walk you through, and I think that will probably help answer several of your questions about what the end goal is here.
Thank you.
As Nil said, I'm Tom Lowell with Casto, and I thought, we felt like a visual in this case because we're enhancing, updating the center would probably be better than any words that I could give you about what we're looking at, what we're trying to do. I think if you can see this, hopefully you'll feel the same way we do about it, which is excited, invigorated, and hopefully be able to get approval to move forward with it. Start here. So just for orientation, as everybody's looking at it, you're at the roundabout, which I assume, or I hope everybody has been there and understands where it is. And Alta is on the right, White House Black Market on the left. So we'll start here. And it carries down through into, heading back towards where the theater currently sits today. And you'll see on the left, that's currently a green space today, just green, grass. And these are parts of the things that we're looking at is trying to figure out and evaluate how we enhance and update and activate a variety of spaces throughout the center. So this is something that could turn out to be, a passive park area or something of that nature where people can come, you can enjoy, you can sit, you can spend a little time, and then move on into the shops, the restaurants, or whatever. As you come down into the first intersection, you can see some blank walls on the right, and then you start to see on the left, there's a mural. And these are the kinds of things that we're looking at putting in on some of these spaces to invigorate, make this a more lively place. And as we turn, you can see that's where one of the residential buildings is shown. There are some additional enhancements along these kind of side streets to create, again, better pedestrian connectivity, activity, opportunities with lighting, maybe some artwork, you have murals. Again, it's engaging people to be out, walking around throughout the center. And then we'll turn, coming up, going down the main street, and this is where you'll start to see more of the significant changes. There'll probably be additional lighting changes and landscaping along the way. But as you see here, we're heading into the area where it turns, and currently it splits to a one-way pair. And we're looking at changing that to a two-way, creating a much larger green space, much larger active space, and creating some facilities that for some of the things we do today. So the first part there is a small building, which could be a retail, sometimes called a jewel box, might be, could be an ice cream, it could be a coffee place, could be seasonally, could be used, could change on the different seasons based upon, variety of uses. And as part of that, we're looking at putting in a permanent stage. We currently operate events at different times of the year, and we have a small stage, but we're having to bring in tents, we have to bring in temporary facilities. So the idea is we create something to allow us to continue to do the things we do, enhance those things, and make it easier and a better space for everybody to be able to utilize. This is where the theater plaza is. There was a fountain there today, but that's being removed with the theater. But we're replacing it with mixed use, with commercial space, with seating, outside seating, like restaurants, possibly a brewery, those types of uses that are more relevant today than they may have been in the past. The restaurants certainly, but it's the outside seating, it's the brewery, it's the place where you have this creative outside space, which allows you to feel comfortable, spend the time, sit, sip a beer, sip coffee, whatever it is, hang out with your family. We have a couple zones here. Again, this is the stage on the upper part of it, and a viewing area that can be utilized throughout the year for different events, for music events or other things, or when those aren't happening, can be used for yoga, story time, whatever it may be. You can have all kinds of variety of events. And then this zone is, again, a more passive, but in these areas, we're looking to try to create things where if you bring your kids out, you have a place to allow them to play where you can sit and watch. And it's not say a jungle gym, but it's more the natural features, mounds, maybe some pipes, rocks, things that kids can play on or utilize, and it just gives them a better environment rather than the typical swings and jungle gym and other things. And as a family, you can enjoy that. You can spend that time. And it also, we feel like this carries through into the restaurants, Firebirds here on the left. That is still planning to be part of the project. And that carries through. So we are looking at tenants. We're working with the tenants that are in those spaces in that area to relocate, to continue to be part of it if they choose. Some, may be moving over. I know we are talking with Bad Daddies, as everybody seems to be very interested in Bad Daddies. So, so this is for us, this is kind of an evolutionary thing on the project. We all know the theater industry has got significant challenges. This theater, as Neil said, is operating at a loss. We are funding the operations. There's a theater across the street. We don't know if that's going to close or not. So, you have two theaters. So this one closes, there's still a theater in Morrisville that can be operating, assuming that theaters survive. We don't know that, but we have taken a look at a variety of things. What can we do with the theater? But unfortunately, the theaters are very unique buildings, and they don't always lend themselves to reuse. And that's where we came back to, is costs and the evaluation of that existing theater and how it was built by the operator. Does not lend itself for us to be able to go in and utilize that building in a fashion that is going to make it sustainable. Close this. So in summary, we're here. We can answer any of the questions about the narrative, the changes in the plan, those things. And I think Thomas summed it up well to say that it's a lot of things that are just being carried forward from the 2008 approval to current day UDO.
All right, thank you. Are you, okay. So we'll go ahead and open the public comment period, and then we'll come back with questions after that, I think, just to go ahead and do that. So for the public comment, if anyone has not signed the sign-in sheet, please do that. We do have a few people here, so out of respect for everybody, try to adhere to the 3-minute limit. If you need to sign the form, just do that outside of the, you're talking, so that we can just, get everybody to comment in a reasonable time. So with that being said, I will open the comment period for this. Do we have anyone that would like to make any comment? Oh, and I'm sorry. First, let me have, before you get to that, she has several comments that have been submitted, which we've all had access to prior to this meeting, but our clerk does need to read those, and so they are part of the record. So I'll let Brooke do that first, and then, sir, if you would, whenever you're ready, you can be next.
Cell phone here. Good evening, members. I have a summary of the public comments that were submitted to town staff through our email. Marilyn Whiteley of 125 Scotingham Lane opposes the rezoning due to concerns of the effects an increase in density would have on the quality of life for the existing and future residents. Robbie Whiteley opposes the proposed rezoning, stating that the town's infrastructure cannot manage the proposed increase in density and has concerns about traffic hazards and congestion created by additional development. Mr. Whiteley stated that he believes other creative uses for the subject area should be considered. Michelle Smith opposes the rezoning and stated that she has concerns that the proposed development would increase traffic and crime in the area. Laura Wall opposes the rezoning and stated that the movie theater was one of the reasons she moved to the area and considers the theater to be a beloved gathering space for existing residents. Ms. Wall also suggests that the Bye Bye Baby location be considered for an indoor pickleball court or a Kohl's or Belk's department store. Paul and Joanne Brescia oppose the rezoning, citing concerns that the increase in density would overwhelm the town's infrastructure and schools. We also had some additional comments that were made anonymously through the town of Morrisville's communication inbox, voicing similar concerns regarding the impact the proposed development could cause on the town's infrastructure. Commenters also stated that they believe Morrisville needs the theater and other activity spaces for residents.
Okay, thank you. Sir, if you'd like to step up to the microphone. I think either one is fine. Just make sure that was on, but it is, yeah.
All right, I'm Mark Dixon. I live at 1413 Everett Fields in Morrisville here. Thank you for hearing my comments this evening on the amendment to the Park West Village Plan Development District. In reading the description of the amendment, I'm concerned that the plan seems to mainly remove an amenity and replace it with housing. It notes office and retail, but to me that's not a description that I favor because it lacks detail other than the open space, which I think is great. There's nothing in the plan that would excite me or anyone who lives in and around Morrisville without a description of the amenities that it would feature. With the increased interest in our town and the influx of people to the area, I would like to see more amenities, not less. I see this amendment as a request for a gift certificate from the town. Of course, the site is worth more when it's rezoned to include housing. I think that any land in the town has significant monetary value as housing because there is a demand for it. If the movie theater is no longer attractive to the owner financially, then I would suggest that the owner be more creative with regard to its land use. Where I'm most concerned is that I don't recall the PZB ever denying these kinds of requests. I wonder truly if I'm wasting my time here. And I'm asking you to deny the request as presented. I would like the members of the PZB to represent the voice of the community. I don't see that including housing is awesome for the town. If you have not witnessed the residents of the town concerned about high density housing and the issues that follow that kind of development? And I'd like you to ask me about public education if you want some more expanded on that. I'm excited for the redevelopment, of course. I think it looks great, but please say no to the inclusion of housing and ask for new and exciting amenities that will draw people to it. Something that will be attractive to people of multiple age groups. I'm not alone in the town residents wanting development of amenities. This is a site that is served by the Smart Shuttle, of course, and per the plan. So it's accessible by many to the community, and having new and unique amenity with access should allow for a successful business plan. I have the opinion that high density housing is not required for this site to thrive and have a positive impact on the community. Park West is already well visited. It already has housing near it, and more housing is not needed to support the potential businesses. If you hesitate to say no to this request to include housing, then find me some other time and let's have a conversation about it if you'd like to explore my perspective. Lastly, I recognize that this time is likely at the end of your day, and I really appreciate you being here and serving our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments?
I have not signed
Okay,
up to.
go ahead and just sign in once you're done,
Appreciate
but we
that.
just want to make sure everything is done correctly.
Elizabeth Dan, 109 Cavista Drive in
Pull the
Morrisville.
mic down.
Can you hear me now? So I second some of those comments we've heard earlier about the concerns about the lack of detail and some of the changes that we've seen in the proposal. I, for one, probably a lot of people would like to see what those changes would actually look like, what some of the options are. I'd also like to hear from the developers if what other considerations were sort of costed and were evaluated prior to recommending the housing. So I'd just like a little bit more detail. I think it would help everyone understand what the change would mean to the community and what the benefits would be. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give you guys the opportunity if you would like to offer any more detail. I know that you can't really go part of the difficulty in this process is that we're at the sort of very large stage now, and then it gets refined later, but hopefully they can offer something. Already, I will say the presentation has helped a little bit, but it clarifies some of those things. But
Well, so that was part of it. I was going to say, as far as providing detail, I thought actually the video rendering was, the most amount of detail that I think we could offer at this time. It gives a good representation of what would be built here. A couple of things I wanted to touch on. This is a mixed-use center, and in order to do that, you need a mix of uses. So part of the consideration in imagining the reimagining how this space could be used was that we're trying to achieve a more vibrant mixed-use center, which I think necessarily includes housing. And from the renderings, from the sketch plan, you can see that we're also talking about vertically integrated mixed use. Just to put things into perspective, it's about 65,000 square feet of existing commercial that is coming offline and is being replaced with about 50,000 square feet of non-residential. That's a mix of office and more commercial and housing units. So, the net change in the amount of non-residential is about 15,000 square feet, which, that's a lot of space, but in a center of this size, we're talking about a fairly marginal change in the overall non-residential square footage. I think it's important, to look at this holistically. I believe the site is 160 acres, thereabouts? 106? Yeah, okay, 106. And, it's been described as high-density housing, 690 units on 106. It's not like roughly 7 units per acre. And maybe that is high density, but again, that's what it takes to achieve a viable mixed-use center. The other thing it takes is access, and that's why CASTO is focused on providing more transit opportunity here. So you've seen that one of the commitments here is to provide an internal location for a smart shuttle stop that's in addition to the existing bus stop in Park Center, in Park West Village. So, I think that, nobody is like a huge fan of the movie theater closing, particularly CASTO. They're operating at a loss, but they're operating at a loss because they do understand that it is an amenity to the center. But it's not viable as is, and that does require them to rethink how to use the space, because that is not something that they can sustain long term. And I think what they have come up with, frankly, this is my own opinion, is a better reimagination for a vibrant mixed-use center. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you all have as well, and hope to have your support. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Dunkosh. So is there any other public comment? This is your chance to, okay. If that's the case, I will close the public comment session. Thank you. So we, I guess, can go into board questions. Tim, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. I get everything changed after COVID, right? And people are upset about the movie theater, but there's an understanding that there's a reality of that business model and how that works. Have you guys looked into other experiential retail that is thriving in other places that wouldn't necessitate having housing? And, if so, where did you fall on that? You're seeing things like box yards, different restaurants that change over time, other experiential retail. What have you seen that could be alternatives to housing in the same footprint?
So I'm going to answer one part of that question, and I think Tom probably has some answers to another. I just want to be clear that part of the guidance that we've received through the land use plan through staff isn't that housing isn't important. For mixed use to work, it needs housing. And one of the goals that I've seen is the inclusion of affordable housing. That is something that this project achieves without public subsidy. So I think the housing is important to this project, regardless of the viability of other experiential type of uses. But Tom, I think, can address that section.
Yes, our first approach was to look at how do we enhance the theater? Do we cut back screens, add other uses, entertainment, bowling, et cetera? And the evaluation through those things is the expansion of the theater was required to get to the point where the operators had enough screens and you could get enough of the additional uses to go with it. And the cost to put all those things in exceeded the cost to build the project to begin with, the theater building to begin with. It started taking out other buildings and doing other things that were not a positive to it. Then you start looking at what are the other uses that you can have for an existing theater that is for anybody who's familiar with it, it's tilt wall construction. So all the interior walls for every auditorium is all these 30, 40-foot tilt walls. And so it limits a lot of the things that you can do to reutilize that space. And so we get to those points and we start then looking at temporary uses, they're not full-time uses. Well, that's not helping the center at all. That's a detriment to the center. As a matter of fact, it becomes really a stigma on the center, and then you start to see a decline in the overall. Other tenants are affected by it. Right now, we're operating to try to keep the whole center alive by funding it ourselves and taking care of those losses that are significant on an annual basis. So that is not sustainable. So we have to look at what are the other options. Well, you start looking at trying to convert to office, convert to other things, and it's just the cost to do those things got to the point the economics to go back and do this are better to take out that existing facility and come back with a different facility, whatever that is. And so I think what we've done is created a mixed use environment that has the amenities that everybody's looking for. Look, the theater, if everybody wants to call it an amenity, it's not full. So, you have to look then at what are the amenities around it. We have the restaurants. We're retaining those. We're adding to them. We're creating better spaces for those. We're creating a better outdoor space that can be utilized, on a more frequent basis. Part of the things about the video screen is we want to be able to activate this on a more regular basis. So if we can create things that we can't do today, like today, we can't do a movie night, but without a theater there, with a permanent video screen, we have opportunities to do those kinds of things that don't exist today. So I think when you look at it from that perspective of creating the right space, and it's unfortunate, we've all been here, I've been with this project from the beginning. The dramatic changes that have happened in society and in the marketplace, it's incredible how quickly things have changed. How you look at all these disruptions. Think about, taxis and Uber. And we're into this zone with streaming in the theaters. And the model, as you said, it's an outdated model. It's not going to survive as it is today. And I think if you look at malls and think about, there were malls all over the place in the 80s and 90s, right? Today, they're getting smaller and smaller, fewer and fewer, and they're adding other uses, housing, entertainment, other things to kind of keep them vibrant and active and desirable. And that's where we are. Housing is an important component, and that has changed dramatically in 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I see that, and the design reflects that. I think that works well. I guess the second part of that question, it really may be directed more towards staff, but I mean, in the course of the presentation that you made, which I thought was very good, you mentioned family and kids multiple times. We have a problem with schooling. Again, that we're going to be adding multiple units with all these kids. They're going to enjoy this amenity. How do we prepare for that? I mean, are we ready to take this on right now, given that we're just building more and even in tonight at OK Thing? So maybe that's a question to more of staff around that.
Well, I guess too, do you have data about how many school-aged children typically live in apartments that you're having planned?
So the condition related to the additional residential units, I want to dive into that a little bit. So it's kind of two parts. The first part is that, I guess I would say the default is they would be limited to 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units only. And if you wanted to do 3-bedroom units, you would have to do age restricted. That's the way the condition works out. So the reason we wrote it that way was for this issue, which is, our perception is that a family with school-age children isn't typically going to be living in a 1-bedroom unit, and
Well, I got to argue with you on that. I mean, I grew up in one of those where I have two brothers named Nick. Okay, I have 6 and small apartments, living in things get packed. So I don't think we can make an assumption. This is where we look at like data versus perception. So again, what are we expecting here, and really are we prepared to deal with it? That's my concern
I guess
around
staff, do you have data from the school system about how many kids are expected to live in apartments of this type?
We do not have data at this time regarding that question, but I can say, when it comes to new residential development, we are required to submit a Wake County residential development form to Wake County Public Schools, and they incorporate that into their planning.
But I mean, do they not have the spreadsheet anymore that calculates based on, there used to be something that they would give something about that?
They may, but we can
That would
certainly.
be helpful information because, I mean, the apartments, how many kids are generated in the apartments is one thing. I think they're pumping up the kids thing because they expect people to still come to this.
Going to come there with kids. If you're going to sell that in the package, that's who's going to come in to the unit.
No,
right?
people are going to come from all around with their kids to this place to have their kids play. I think that's what,
yeah, I mean, then we need to think about that. But I think that would be good to have data. So if
Mm-hmm.
schools are over capacity today and you add one more kid, that's an issue, and you just expand upon that over and over again. So it would be good to sense of what kind of problem we would get into in that particular area.
Sure.
That's
Yeah. I
all
mean,
it
there
is.
might be some standard percentage that they typically see for that amount
there
of
definitely
units.
used to be. There was something we've talked about in the past years back. I mean, they've got some calculation model that says that.
Sure. That's something we could certainly check on.
Yeah, and then the last kind of question from my point of view is goes to the traffic piece that you mentioned. So there was that, I did a trip analysis and study, and this might just be helpful for other folks listening to kind of understand. That takes into consideration the world as it is today, right?
Sure.
Or is it looking back at data that is 5-6 years old?
So yeah, I can get into that, and I will say, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But no, to be clear, that is a new trip generation letter. It was done in July of 2023, and that is taking their data in terms of the estimated trips that their current development makes now, and then what the estimated trips would be, with demolishing those uses, and then, putting the additional residential as well as additional office retail square footage. So they did find, and it was done by a certified, engineer, and engineer sealed it, and our team, our planning, transportation team reviewed it, and they did find that there wouldn't be any additional trips with that additional residential and commercial and office, due to the movie theater, being a pretty high trip usage, at least from the terms of the ITRE manual. I understand what you're about to say. You're probably going to say, well, it's not in use right now. So, but the way that transportation, engineering is done is it's based on those, those trip numbers based on that manual.
Yeah, and these guys are obviously the experts. That's their whole profession. I think what we're looking for here is pass the red face test, to just kind of making sure that it makes sense. So if I'm driving down Chapel Hill Road today, right, and I know that the movie theater is not packed and some retail businesses are suffering, okay, and it's congested. Now you're telling me you're going to add 312 units, you're going to build places that are going to be full and exciting and busy. How is that not going to add more traffic?
Sure. And that kind of speaks into some what y'all were, talking about earlier before this with, with the elected officials as well. But they did meet our trip generation standards, that are in the UDO for these types of things. I certainly understand your point, but that definitely speaks to a greater discussion on these types of things. But they did do that trip generation letter, and it did find that it would not be any more than what it is right now in terms of maximum, peak uses.
Thank you.
Yep.
I can certainly understand. I mean, it just off its face, it seems like obviously a movie theater is going to bring traffic in the evening, but in the morning, you probably will have more trips just because you've got an apartment. Obviously, you don't have 1,000 people coming to that theater in the morning or leaving the theater in the morning. So, yeah, I mean, it seems there might be a bump at a different time of day. Yeah. I mean,
Certainly different peak times for sure for those different uses.
sorry, Ken, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. I have a few questions, and I apologize in advance that some of it is going to be about the movie theater. We've gotten not many public comments, but the ones that we have received have all talked about the loss of the movie theater or the increased traffic. We do have, as you mentioned, another theater in town. I think the one at Park West is certainly superior to that one. And I understand that you guys are currently funding the theater, and thank you for that, and that I know that's not sustainable. So I'm kind of going to follow up on what my colleague asked as far as alternatives, whether it be decreasing the footprint of the movie theater. I don't know how many screens are in there now, but maybe cutting that, maybe moving it somewhere. I don't know if that's going to increase foot traffic to the movie theater. I just kind of want to see, what, options might have been explored. And then in addition to that, we see that in addition to the movie theater, Bad Daddy's is also going to be demolished. What's the other commercial property that's going to be demolished?
Which?
Yeah, the two buildings that are in front of the theater, the one that contains Bad Daddy's and the one that has Which, those are the only two that, in addition to the theater, that would be removed.
So just on either side of the theater?
That's correct. And as I said, we are working with Bad Daddy's on a relocation.
Okay.
We do have some vacant space, so we're working through those things.
Right. Okay.
Try to keep them because we don't. It's a great use, and they're a great tenant, and we want to keep those.
Okay.
And to touch on a couple of other things, you said you didn't know how many screens in there. I think it's 14. And you asked about what other considerations were given to keeping the movie theater, essentially, maybe a smaller footprint, different location. So to my knowledge, and Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, they did look at, I don't know what they call it, the ones with the food and all that stuff. That type of movie theater, he had addressed this earlier, that the upfit for the movie theater space would have been in excess of what it cost to build in the first place. As far as like relocating it or making it smaller, so part of the issue here is that industry. And so I feel pretty confident saying that probably wasn't explored, because the issue here is not that a lot of people don't like movies. The issue here is that not a lot of people are going to theaters. And so having a smaller one, I'm not sure changes that fact. And so, I don't know that was explored in that manner.
I'm going to change direction a little bit and talk about the housing. Is there a price point that we're looking at? These, they're not going to be luxury apartments, I imagine, but, what type of apartments are we looking at? Because I think both of you gentlemen were here during the joint meeting with council, and affordable housing is a big issue. And the more apartments you get at a certain higher price point, the more you're excluding affordable housing, which, as I said, is important. So can you give me a little bit more information about the housing?
I don't know if Tom has any better information on price point, but to your point about affordable housing, I mean, that is kind of this, that's, in my mind anyway, kind of central component of this mixed-use reimagination is that it will have housing and 7% of it is affordable, right? So the mix, I don't know what the market rate units would go for, but they can't be so much higher than what we're gonna have to by HUD standards, because that's what we've pegged it to in the zoning condition, apply to the affordable units. And I don't know, Tom, if you got better information.
And if you can, what is the number you're using for the 80%? I found
Yeah.
a couple different conflicting things when I was looking.
Well, we're using HUD's number.
Okay, well,
And-
what is that number?
Well, let me get to that in a minute. The point is that number changes. So what the answer is today is not
What is it today?
necessarily going to be helpful.
What is it today?
For what it would be. So it's 80,900.
Okay, so you're basing 80% of 80,900, or you're?
No, that is the 80% number.
Okay,
If
so
I don't, yeah, that is 80%.
You're saying the median household income in the Raleigh area is $100,000?
Roughly, yeah.
The Raleigh area?
The Raleigh MSA, yeah.
Okay.
That's, this
I mean,
is a
I came
HUD
up with
number.
numbers vastly different than that when I looked. I mean, that is definitely the number in Morrisville. But you said Raleigh and Wake County, and I think that's closer to like $50,000.
The Raleigh MSA includes more than just Raleigh, and
totally understand.
that's just like the HUD, metropolitan statistical area. That's what it is, and that area is used for lots of municipalities in Wake
I
County
understand,
because that's the data they have.
but it also includes places that are deep in the recesses of the county where people don't make much money. I just, it would be nice to see the number written down somewhere, because I mean, it's kind of hard to have constructive sort of talk about that at all if you don't.
So what I'm saying is, I'm not disagreeing with you that the numbers are different, based on where you're at. HUD has one MSA, and that's what's used even in those counties that like even in the more rural areas that you're talking about, where the numbers should obviously be lower, the HUD number is still the same.
Okay.
And that's a problem with HUD, but in Morrisville, I mean, I think it probably works out fine.
Yeah, right. It's a very different situation here, more so than there is in some unincorporated areas that are between Garner and Clayton on that side of the county, which is still part of the Raleigh-Cary MSA.
Yeah, and I'm happy to send you those numbers. They are written down. Is my point.
Cool. Sorry, I mean,
I can't recall the exact number offhand, but it is, right around 100,000.
Wow, that's amazing. Mhm.
My next question is actually for staff. What exactly is a private entertainment facility?
That could be a range of different types of uses. So think bowling alleys, arcades. I think are both indoor and outdoor proposed. Thomas, anything you want to add?
They are, yeah. So, I mean, bowling alleys, arcades, movie theaters, those types of uses, and there are a range of them in the UDO.
Does it include or exclude adult entertainment?
It does exclude it. That is not in that definition at all. Yep.
All right, thank you.
That'll be very proud of entertainment.
Can I just follow up on one item? As far as the workforce housing rents, when we go to the 80% AMI, typically, and this is just kind of an anecdotal, it's not an absolute, but it's generally, in the 20% range less than what the market rate is. So,
Well,
it
I
gives you
guess
some
that
idea
makes sense.
of what
Yeah.
it is. And then going back to the schools, as an example, the district lofts, we have 118 units. We have 2 school-age children that occupy those units. And that's fairly typical of what we see in this kind of complex where we have 1 and 2 bedroom units. In those residents, and that's why we specifically set up the condition to try to help minimize and mitigate impact to the schools.
I like the design plans. In Park West probably 3-4 times a week. I cut through there, I live there, I shop there. I like the improvements with the lights. It saddens me to see the empty shops, the nail shops, the restaurants. Maybe on a Saturday night you'll see something. When I looked at the designs that you had, hopefully it brings a younger vibe. We have a lot of young scientists here. a lot of young money. So to me, when I see one bedroom, that doesn't mean that has to be low income. That means we have young professionals who make very good money. They have PhDs. They're from around the world. If you could bring in those people, make it appealing to them to use their laptops outside somewhere and start to shop locally, I think that's great. I really do. So you've accommodated the low-income housing. You're sensitive. We have some aging population, but I think the shops in the parking section are empty. We have some anchor stores where everybody seems to be shopping. So I think this is a refreshment that you really need there. I would say that one of my questions would be, people love to shop at Trader Joe's, but they like grocery shop difference. Food Lion is across the street, and I don't know if this is for staff, and Spice House. So walking across from behind Target over to Food Lion, there isn't a sidewalk. So I'm one of the many people who walk through the grass with my groceries, and we count steps when we go through there. So everybody does it. So you might sometimes see a collection of 10 people walking through the grass going into the shopping center for groceries. And there's 2 different grocery stores over there. So that might just be something that we consider as more people start to walk across that main road. How do we accommodate that? And the only other thing is I noticed, just as a correction from the staff on the ordinance that was written, the 4th one down, the 4th whereas, it stated that we had a public discussion on this topic on the PZB on October 12th, and I think that was just a carryover error from something else. You might want to take that off. I'm sorry, I didn't want to bring that up. And then otherwise, I think it looks good. I think you have opportunities. I personally have never been to the movie house. I don't know anybody that has. I'm walking distance from there. You even sent free tickets. We couldn't give the free tickets away. So it was really interesting for me to see the comments, and I read through all of them about the movie theater and how passionate they were, because I rarely see anybody over there. So that was just, I don't know if it's an emotional tie or if people are really going in there. I'm sure you have the data, and I certainly would believe you know whether that's a surviving business or not. So if it's going to close anyway, I don't really see that as something that we can really debate. And for me, the housing seems fine. That's all I have.
Request for data?
They've
Really?
probably
Yeah.
done their data because
Yeah.
they own the property. And so from my standpoint, if they've done the data and they don't feel it's a viable amenity for them, and they're choosing to close it down, they're presenting an option to put housing
Oh, I'm not
there.
talking just about them. Can I go now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, thank you on that. So just rough numbers wise, I understand the issue dealing with necessarily children living in those units and that type of thing. But when you're adding that many units, and right now, can you just kind of put in my head, I'd go by it, and sometimes I'm more of a visual. The apartments you're building right now, that are on the edge of Morrisville Parkway, what's the total aggregate of that? When they're done?
Yeah, that will have 114 units.
114?
Right.
So,
Those are all 3-story buildings.
okay, so that 114, is that added into your number of 690?
No, it's not. That's
Okay.
a separate, it's outside of the Park West
So-
WPD.
Well, not by much, okay, those are out parcels. But that total area, you're adding that 100 and some on top of the 690, correct? Just for my clarification.
So the addition, yes, there's 114 being
Yeah.
added on the property on Morrisville Parkway.
Mhm.
And then this proposal is to add up to another 312 to Park West. We're not adding 690. It gets to a total of 690 based upon the existing. You have the Bristol and you
Okay.
have the district lofts.
Okay.
So those are already existing.
So you're
This
figuring
is-
Bristol in there then, not just
Yeah,
the,
and
okay,
that is
okay.
part of
Thank
Park
you, that's a
West.
clarification for me, I appreciate that. But with that said, even with one car per vehicle, and yeah, that would be about between 690, if you got 1 1/4 cars, you're adding about 862 new vehicles there. So the question to me is, on your horizontal properties, oh, he's itching to talk. On your horizontal properties, if you're adding that, are you looking at a parking deck, and where would that be located?
No, we are not looking at a parking deck with this project. So there is adequate surface parking when this is done to supply the needs for all of the uses. And it's not, and I think, it's in that quadrant that we're looking at, not saying that parking in the front of Ross is providing parking for people who are going to be living here. We look at it in that quadrant because we have to have a viable use at the end of the day. So if we provide something where nobody can park, we're not going to have any residents.
Right. Yeah.
We're not going to have any customers at our the commercial space. The restaurants aren't going to have anybody.
Maybe I'm looking at it all wrong when I'm over there, but I just wanted to ask that question.
Sure.
In conjunction with it, and it was brought up earlier, it's always good to get the input with a lot of things on the getting in and out of there, other than people taking a shortcut from Fifth Third Bank. God love those guys, but out of the parking lot. So I would be interested, and I'm sure you have it somewhere. What's the existing ADT coming in and out of that at different locations? And the other thing would be interesting to know, and maybe this would be with staff, how many, I would say, accidents or anything in a period of time frame that has been coming in and out of that section? Just for my sake, I'm not speaking for anybody, just for my sake, it would be interested with the police department on that issue too.
Sure. So we obviously don't have those numbers on hand, but we could certainly
That'd be
research
great.
that and, give it to the board after we get those numbers.
Okay, that would be good. And the other thing you brought up, which is a good point in regards to the numbers and everything in regards to the income, but also taking a skew like every community has. You termed it in there as workforce. So teachers, civil servants, those type of people that are looking for affordable housing, that are making possibly, and not to speak from them, is maybe 50 to 60,000, starting in those public service roles. How would you address that as affordable housing in your project?
So the term, I think we use workforce housing, is generally considered at the 80% AMI. And the affordable housing, I think, kind of based on the HUD definition, is in the 60% AMI. And, the way we've written the zoning condition, we are pegging this to the 80% AMI level.
Okay.
So to answer your question, I don't know that we are accommodating, that
So
income
technically, you're not doing affordable, you're doing work based on your statistics.
level. I think
Workforce.
technically the term workforce housing is defined at 80% AMI with HUD. But I think affordable housing in Morrisville has been considered at 80% AMI.
That's a cap, meaning the people would have to make less than that to qualify for these units, is that?
Right,
That's correct,
right.
So they could make 50 if they could somehow swing it, whatever.
Sure,
They could
yeah.
do it, but it's not necessarily aimed below that.
I would agree with that statement.
So the prior rezonings that have been approved by the town council have been at the 80% AMI. As you know, town council did just adopt the incentive zoning policy, which does talk about and start to encourage more housing at that 60 AMI level. Just for your reference, 60% AMI, one person would be making about 47,000 a year, and at 80% AMI, about 63.
I just promised I have two other things here. You mentioned a hotel, and I saw something on your drawings that behind the fashion wear, black and white, white and black, I get it wrong. There's a building back there connected to the deck. Do you have any specific use for that, and where would the hotel you mentioned be located?
So on our sketch plan, I don't
Yeah.
believe we're showing a hotel at all. The hotel use is just an allowable use in the overall district, but development in this center requires us to use a sketch plan. So there is no hotel.
Okay, there's no hotel?
Not associated with this rezoning. And the only uses that are associated with this are on the sketch plan. So that's the 312 dwelling units, as well as the office and retail space, about 24,000 of each.
At this point, because I still have things in my head to verify this, a big issue in every community, as you're well aware now, and I see you do a great job of it here.
Do you have a number of the data on tree canopy for this project?
Oh, there's none. I mean, there's hardly any. The entire site interior is essentially,
Can you clarify the question that you're asking? Because
Well, I look at all these trees coming up, and I'm familiar with the site over there, and I don't see a lot of these that you have dictated here, and I'm sure you have some other ones in some capacity. But have you addressed that as part of your plan, tree canopies and the areas that you can do them on?
Planting new trees, or are you
Yeah,
talking about
new
preservation?
trees, new trees.
Well, yeah, we're going to meet the planting requirements. We may even enhance that beyond what's out there. But, where there's existing viable trees that we're not doing any work, those are going to remain.
Okay.
The intent is not to go in and just wipe it out.
No, that was
we
my
still have to
question.
come back
You're
and meet
adding,
landscape requirements, and you may see some enhancements on those things.
Yeah.
These are details that get worked out as we go forward. as
right.
we look at.
And those data, that data would be available to the board and in the planning department, so we have that.
That detail of what the plantings will be
Yeah.
comes at a different stage. And I think staff will tell you it comes probably at the site plan review where they look at specifics to make sure
Oh,
we're
okay,
meeting the
thank you.
landscape requirements.
I don't have anything else. That's fine. Thank you.
I just wanted to reiterate that that's the proper time that we get into the different landscaping
thank you.
standards. Yep.
All right, so I had a couple of questions, although a lot of this has been discussed. So to talk about the bus stop, it mentions as per the sketch plan, but I couldn't find it on there. And I know you said it's to be, is it on the sketch plan? I just missed it, or?
well, it ought to be.
So it's in very small print
Okay.
on the sketch
I mean,
plan.
I tried to even pull up like the one that shows it in more detail. I just couldn't find it anywhere. I was just wondering. And
I won't be surprised if it's not shown on there. There have been many.
I understand,
iterations
and
of
it sounds like that
drawings,
has been, and
but
that's
it
fine.
is on there
Right.
on the official.
Yeah. And the detail is not ideal on this PowerPoint. Let me pull it up real quick.
And then as he's doing that, so is there contemplated like a shelter of any kind with this? Because that would certainly be a condition that would be favorable, I think, to some people, because it makes it, one, look like a better development when you have a bus stop and people aren't just sitting around like,
All right, so
in
the
the
way for
air.
me to answer that question is, what we have talked about is a pullout and potentially shelter. When we've looked at the specs for what I would say, like the standard specs for that type of transit facility is very difficult to fit in here. So I guess I would say the reason the condition is written the way it is because we recognize that at time of site plan, we're gonna need to be flexible about how to do it, but the intent here is to provide like a full out transit facility.
You mean, so it would actually shelter over the bus and everything?
No, not over the bus,
okay.
but it would allow
Okay.
the bus to pull out of the, like.
Oh, I
lane of
got you.
traffic, right.
When you say pull, I see that now. Okay. I mean, because like when I drive by on Cary Parkway, we see people, there's 2 bus stops along there right now, and there's just a big old concrete pad there. I think there's a chair at one of them, a seat. But like, it would just look, I don't know, like people cared about transit if there was a covered facility there. And I think it would only enhance the amenity and enhance the look, and the look you're going for is sort of a mixed-use city-type development. Real cities have bus stops with shelters. You don't see people standing on the corner in New
Yeah.
York City in Times Square without a shelter. So, I mean, that,
I think we're in agreement there. I'm just telling you the practical challenge.
yeah, I understand.
Yeah, it's just fit,
Yeah.
because we're not, that's all it is. It's
Gotcha.
fit, but I think we're
So
all
that,
in
all right, that's
agreement here.
that little area there right by the other
Yep.
little apartments there. Okay. I did think it was interesting that as I've driven by here 1,000 times, you're finally putting things in some of these little spaces that I felt like could have been used more actively in the past and to a benefit. So to answer the question, I didn't realize there was actually 2-way traffic down the middle of this new, beside the green area. It wasn't totally clear on some of these drawings. And so I was confused, thinking you were expecting traffic to loop all the way around. So I think that'll work. Okay. So now I went over there earlier today just to look because I haven't been there in a month or two. Yeah, I mean, probably a third of the shops in that general area are vacant right now. you're adding, I mean, because you're tearing down a 65,000 square foot of building, but what, 40,000 of that is a theater. So that isn't really retail that's perceived by people. So you're adding retail to this compared to what we have there right now. Probably about 11,000 square feet by what I looked at. So if you're adding 11,000 square feet of retail, a place you already don't have but 66% occupancy, I mean, do you feel like just having this extra activation is going to help that? I mean, do you?
Well, so it's part of an overall strategy, right? So by no means is all of this going to be built at one time, overnight. And I would also just point out that if the zoning is approved, it doesn't require us to tear down
Understand.
the theater. So this is really future planning, right?
Okay. And that was
so
one of my other questions.
I don't know that they would just bring it all online if a third of the center is vacant.
Yeah, right.
But there are certainly needs, at least from ownership standpoint, and there needs to be some reinvestment in Park West Village to keep it competitive, keep it viable, and keep it a destination that people want to come to. So it's kind of a balancing act of both. You got to invest in the right places, but they don't want to just add more vacant retail space.
Let me add to that. Just the part of the change is creating that two-way traffic and getting rid of the one-way is to allow that to be a more activated, more vibrant, more usable space that is going to be used, hopefully, I don't want to say 24/7, but, it's going to be used 7 days a week, early morning to late evening. And that then creates a situation where you have a viability for those spaces that are going back in.
Mm-hmm.
And as there's more people there, there's more people using it, it just creates a viability. As you said, the Main Street has got some vacancies, and that's been a challenge for us. So this is part of a bigger strategy to, reinvigorate, to update and make this viable and compatible and competitive for the long term, not just, for a simple short-term gain.
Right. Right, because part of this too, you're losing some street parking. I'm kind of back and forth. People tend to think if I can't park in front of a store, I won't go to that store. I don't know if that's really true, but there are several like Fleet Feet in that area is going to lose sort of any communication directly to the parking. But yeah.
Yep, and you're right. And so that's why the things that we look at in the planning is trying to create, lighted and walkways that have interest that are going to draw people in. Better lighting, murals, all these different things that are going to help draw people to say, okay, I'm willing to park away.
But if you have people walking there from the park, you might have some more of that spillover too. Yeah. Talking about the cast images, does that mean like projectors on the ground, or are you going to like cast it into concrete?
No, it's more like projectors.
Okay.
So we're trying to think, again, some of these things going forward is trying to think to the future. And what does that mean? And these are some things that could happen. It may not, but it's things that we would like to have the ability to do if it does turn out to be that way.
Gotcha. Yeah, when I read that, that's what I kind of thought it was. I just want to make sure you weren't talking about trying to, literally changing real estate stuff into stone. So yeah. And I'll admit, I don't like the theater going away. I haven't been to this theater in a while, but I have gone there in the past. It was also, I guess, now that I remember that they built them out of tilt, it makes sense why you never heard the sound from the adjacent theater compared to some other theaters that I would go to where you can hear the adjacent sound. But that definitely does present some construction difficulties, no doubt. I think that's all I had. Another round, anyone?
I just have one question. So I can understand you going through, and I've been through the experience of movie theaters and stuff like an adaptive reuse. Have you thought up or considered with these small spaces using, as you say, current or moving forward, entertainment venues, but creating an entertainment district that would draw people to, and that would just, I'm sorry, at night, talking too much with my hands. But like it would draw people to a particular area there, whatever there might be, but it would take advantage of the more flexible entertainment venues out there.
I think that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish here, particularly with bringing more interest to the outdoor areas. So like with for example, string lighting. I know that doesn't sound, that's sexy, but like it is very, it's very nice and inviting, and creating more like walking areas, gathering areas outside, seating areas, and just generally more interest in kind of the outdoor realm to keep people there longer, and to be walking around. That kind of is the idea. Does that get at what you're asking?
Well, you know, coming from Pennsylvania in the south is a big improvement in outdoor usage, but you're still going to have inclement weather and things like that. I'm thinking a combination indoor too, utilizing that.
I think what Neil was saying is correct. What we're trying to envision here and do is create those spaces so that you do have that activity. And, you know, they'll all have indoor spaces and they'll have the ability to have outdoor space. So it's a combination of two. So if you have inclement weather, you're able to go into, you know, whatever it is, whether it's the sushi shop or the wine bar or whatever it may be. But the idea is to try to create this kind of, you know, all day kind of activity. So you've got different things going on. It could be the kids' gym, it could be something else, but it creates all these different activities that are going on all day in these smaller spaces. But they all, you know, the one key is why they all have to have exposure for people to be able to see them. So putting them inside of a theater doesn't help that, you know, an old theater doesn't help that.
Hey, just one follow-up. As you mentioned it, so you mentioned on the building of the retail that you wouldn't do all this at one time, that there'd be stages to it and so forth, which makes sense. Is the residential component in your plan going in first? Is that sort of the phase one of the development?
If we look at, say, if we are approved and we move forward with this, the initial phase is to work on revamping the main drive. And if everybody knows where the Hickory Tavern was, to revamp that building, you have it ready for some relocation, hopefully. You know, we're able to work out and say, move a tenant over into that space and then get everything cleared to then move forward with the main mixed-use building in the back where the theater is. But yeah, the first part would be updating the park space, renovating one of the buildings, and then the others would follow.
And I guess what is the timescale you're considering here? I mean, you're talking 2 to 3 years, 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, from the time, I wouldn't imagine we'd be able to get started until at best sometime, you know, maybe into the spring, late spring.
Okay, all right.
on the
So
first
you're
part.
talking about doing this
And
more
then-
immediately. Yeah.
And then you're talking about probably a 3+ year build out.
Right. But this isn't necessarily something you're putting out there for way in the future. These are plans that you actively have and you would like to pursue.
Assuming that the
if you can.
environment and everything works out. I mean, we're in a different stage right now. It could get delayed. We don't know for sure, but we are planning for this because we know that there are issues with the theater.
Any other comments? Feel okay making a decision to think? What, I mean, any? I mean, we can certainly make a motion to delay this to another meeting, or we can discuss it and make a motion to approve or deny now.
I would move forward. I mean, I think everybody has formed an opinion, so.
He wants to think on it.
Yeah, I kind of would like to think on it as well.
And I think I could probably move forward now. I think I have enough information. I'm not sure that we're going to get any substantive change. Is there any other, I don't think anybody offered up any voluntary potential other than the bus stop stuff, which maybe is going to get worked out.
No, I mean, my two concerns are kind of where I started from. I mean, you know, the impact on schools. I mean, I think if we're really looking at these residential units not being used by families, would we be comfortable making that as such? I mean, do you feel for the extra added units, 55 and up, 50 and up communities, and making that part of the plan?
Are you asking whether we would consider essentially removing the non-age restricted and making it all age restricted? Is that what you're asking?
If that was, you know, that's part of, I mean, it's a need that we have in the community. You know, we're not talking about 1,000 houses. This is 300.
What were you at? I'm sorry. What
Yeah,
was the question?
So were you saying that you were comfortable because we've already sort of shown there wouldn't be a lot of kids there?
No, what
Or
I'm
you
saying,
were
I don't
wanting a
believe
change?
that. I think that if you open apartments, whether it's one bedroom or two bedroom, you're going to have, families. And I don't know that we're set up
So you believe that a lot of people live in one bedroom, two apartments that are going to
to have a kid.
schools?
Yes. I think,
I
single
disagree with
person
that.
with a,
I just think as some
I mean, I think it's just,
information
you,
Because he has
people
two
live in that
people
situation.
living
I
there.
mean, I've never been stuck behind a bus getting 30 kids at an apartment, but plenty of times outside of a neighborhood, I've definitely been stuck behind a bus that had
Yeah.
30 kids getting on and off of it.
Well,
I mean,
So I just want to make one comment about the request here. The age restriction, it is under the Fair Housing Act. So I just want to be clear that we're talking about the same thing. You can't age restrict 100% of the units by federal law. So at most, 80% of the units would be age restricted.
Yeah.
The rest of the 20%, they could go to someone who's at whatever age, but they also are just open generally to whomever.
Yeah.
So, so I don't exactly know how that
Yeah.
plays into your specific concern, but our experience has been that in the 1 and 2 bedroom dwelling units that are in this kind of mixed use area, which Casto has broad experience in this. This isn't their only site. They have very few school age children. I'm not trying to tell you it's zero, right? But I don't think you're going to have a glut of families living in 1 and 2 bedroom units. So the way the condition works now, they could be either age restricted or they would be only 1 and 2 bedrooms.
and I guess that's the question. Would you consider an age restriction to the degree that would be possible?
No, I don't think we
Okay.
would.
Just to respond to your question about school age children, we did run the school age calculator kind of as the meeting was going on. That is the Morrisville specific calculator that we worked with the school district on, and that calculator is based on density. So I will say you're looking at a total of 690 units over 106 acres. So just keep in mind that because the Morrisville specific calculator is density based, that does impact the number. But it came out with 32 school-age children for 690 units.
so in theory, about half of that for this additional project.
And I would say, and we think it would be much less than that, but.
It is when you take those units over here, that density it's so low, it becomes more of a townhome type of development, probably on that kind of density.
You're asking me to do
Well, I'm just
690 by 20 acres? We can run that.
I'm just saying that like you had a density that was closer to 6.2.
Yeah, I don't follow exactly, I mean, I know the calculator exists, but I don't know the specifics of how that,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're gonna make this worse on yourself by what you were just saying.
It's more a curiosity question.
Yeah.
At 690 units over 106 acres doesn't necessarily suggest we're talking about vertically integrated
Well,
mixed
I
use.
understand, but I mean, I think we're
Yeah.
just more concerned here about maybe it'll be less in apartments, but I'm just saying, if we have the data that's based on something that they work with the school system, I don't know that,
Sure.
you know.
And Tom shared the data that he has, the best data he has available to him based off of a current community that they have that's similar to this setting. But, I get it.
I mean,
You guys have a calculator.
Yeah.
And Casto has,
I mean, to me, 16 additional children of varying ages, but there'll be maybe one high school kid and the rest will be whatever. It's not that significant. But it could be even less than that. But that's, Any other discussion?
Other than, I still think our goal here is to say, does it meet the 4 requirements, that we're looking for a modification? And I think we're trying to solve their design problems,
Correct.
what they should put into the movie theater versus saying, we're open to accepting these ideas and they'll continue to work with the city over what exactly goes in there. But it meets the land use plan, modification encourages design, attractive destination, meets the smart shuttle, privately developed and affordable housing. So, when I look at it, I'm thinking, what
It checks
what
the
else?
boxes off.
We check the boxes off, but what else do you need? Not that, we can certainly discuss those other items, but I feel like we're talking about trying to design for their movie theater.
And again, I mean, it's like that restaurant that you heard that closed that you really wish wouldn't have closed. I mean, we used to buy stuff from Zenfish. They closed, but we would only buy it infrequently. We weren't keeping, those things happen. I mean, it is nice having a movie theater there, but I mean, I will be honest and say that I've gone to Fenton movie theater a lot more recently than that one.
I agree. I agree with what you're saying. I think it's not our place to get involved in that. I mean, the experts kind of look at what the market is and what the retail will be there. I guess, the 2 points where I would like more data, and maybe that's just really where I'm uncomfortable, is actually how it will impact schools from a number perspective, and then a little bit more detail around the traffic analysis. Because I do go back to that. We're looking at something right now that is not being used. There's not that impact. We're going to put something which will be very successful, or that's the goal. If it's full and successful and has more, there's going to be an impact. I'd like to know what that impact
Right, but on the other hand, wouldn't it make sense if you're going to put apartments, presumably there's some need for X number of units, wouldn't it be better to put them in a place where there's already significant infrastructure getting in and out of this area compared to some greenfield site that is off on some
Yes
road
and
that
no.
hasn't
I mean,
been
that-
widened for 2 lanes?
That's one way to look at it. I think that does have a good piece, but there's also those folks are going to be going in and out to work, in and out to other places. You don't shop just where you are in that one
Understand.
place. And if it's successful, people will be coming into those things. So,
Right, but all of the movie theater traffic won't be coming in the later parts of the
there
day.
is no
so.
movie theater traffic.
Well, but I mean, that was what it was designed to do. I understand what you're saying. I mean,
But yeah, I mean, those are the 2 points.
but yeah, in the morning for sure, you're definitely gonna have much more traffic. I agree. You don't need to be a traffic engineer to understand that.
So by my math, there's at least 40% of the board that wants to delay the vote. Am I correct? Okay, so it's actually 60%. So I make a motion to delay the vote.
We have a second? All right.
I understand there's a motion on the table. I would just ask one question about it. Delay it to when? 2 questions. Delay it to when? And then the other question is, and what are we supposed to come back with?
Okay, and that was gonna be my question once we got further than that. So, yeah, we would delay it until the next meeting. This is what we would typically do in this type of situation. And then, yeah, that was my question for the board. What concrete items do we need to make a decision that we don't have now?
Well, personally, I think I have the information. I
Okay.
just really, I'm not swayed one way or the other right now, and I need to give it more thought.
And during this time, the information can be submitted to the applicant and through the plan. Any questions we can correct.
Correct. I think it would be good to circle back
Yeah,
and
I don't think we've
get
given-
some definite feedback as to what those items are so they could be followed up on.
Right, yeah, if we're gonna delay this, then we need to give some actionable items to them that we feel like we need more information, and I think that would be fair. They can provide that information, but I don't think we can just delay. That's just kicking the can down the road, and we're not really doing our job here, and we're not helping anybody by just, I mean, it's 9:29. We can sit there and discuss all night. It's not even that late. I just don't know that sitting on this for a month at a time in which December, who knows, we might not have everyone here.
What's the rush?
There's no rush, but I do think we owe it to all applicants to act on things in a timely manner.
Is a month delay untimely?
It isn't a month. What I'm saying, we need to consider ramifications. So we need to, again, I'm not sure if everyone's planning on being here in December. If we are, then that's good. We are down some already. We don't have any alternates because of the composition of the board right now. We're not likely to have anyone sworn in by then. Well, understand, but right. So, it wouldn't take but 1 or 2 people, and then we would be making a decision with 3, and that doesn't seem very fair to the citizens of Morrisville to have a board that's already down making, which we could. So we just need to consider that, and then again, make sure that I mean, we could even, if you wanted to take a break, we wouldn't be able to talk about this during the break, but if people wanted to think about it, we could do that as well. But I think we should, just sitting simply considering that we wanted to sleep on it, I mean, I'm not sure that's necessary.
That's fair. I think for me, looking, and maybe we have this already, and forgive me, the traffic analysis, how that is being taken into consideration. Is that taken with the timing of that, and is that considering things like the town center development? To me, that has impact on
Northwest.
Your Chapel Hill Road. This is going to have impact on that. What I don't have clarity around are this traffic analysis taking into consideration that, or is this an isolated thing? My concern is that this is an isolated thing where we look at, here's the implication of 300 more units, this is what's going to happen, but it's not taking into consideration the whole of all of the development that has been going on. So having, that clarity would be helpful for me. And then the additional detail, if it's really, 13, 15, 30 kids.
Tim, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Just everybody, if you need to use the restroom, get some water, anything of that nature, and then we will be back in 5 minutes. So that will be on that clock, it will be 9:38. I'm sorry, 9:37. If everyone would please take your positions. Okay, so back to the discussion. So we kind of cut you off just because I didn't. Well, continue with your fabulous point, Tom.
Yeah, I guess, so going back to it was the data request. So I think give credit, I think the plan itself is really nicely done, nicely thought out. If it was everything but the housing, I'd be much more comfortable with it. I think that's the sticking point for me. And, to look at that, and I would say that, yes, to a degree, there is a little bit of concern regardless of the housing with the traffic. So those are the two data points that I would need to feel more comfortable. So if we have that, great.
So we have a traffic analysis, though. You're saying that you doubt that it's accurate?
I don't know if it's based on that one point in time, or it's looking at what's currently in development. So to be clear, the traffic analysis of this is the amount of cars that are entering this junction at this time based on what's being newly developed in this park. I don't know that that's taken into consideration all of the associated development that's already been approved. The town center specifically that's going to push cars through town Chapel Hill.
So Thomas, can you or the applicant speak a little bit more to the traffic analysis, and maybe if there is some, the time of day could be an impact, if you could maybe go into that a little bit.
So I'm not a traffic engineer.
Understand, but you guys paid for it, or your client paid for it.
I think what I would say is, and so first of all, I can't speak to all of the assumptions in the traffic study, and I recognize that that's what you're asking about primarily. I think I feel comfortable saying that. So, and I mentioned this in my original presentation. This development is based off of trip budget, and the changes that we're talking about here do not adjust that trip budget. And all of the road improvements that were required of this development for its full build-out have been already accommodated. So I would say the traffic study and the zoning already accommodate for the trips that are expected by this development. Whether that means we've looked at the current traffic today, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But, if the movie theater is not, in full use today and there's less vehicles on the road, that may be true. At some point, though, the movie theater was going gangbusters, and that's what this development was built towards, to accommodate that.
And that makes sense. I guess maybe to clarify that question. So on the trip budget, you're looking at trips throughout the day, right? You're changing the nature of those trips. So you're going from people going to maybe a matinee and then going to a movie at night primarily as the draw, to to now people going to work in the morning and coming home at night. And that's the concern.
So, and I think it was mentioned earlier by staff, like the peak could change, but that doesn't change the trip budget, which is what this development was based on.
So you're saying the peak, while it might be a different time, wouldn't necessarily be higher than the peak that would have been at some other time.
Correct.
Actually, what happens is it balances it out more. So instead of having a predominantly PM peak, people take some away and put some in the morning, and it kind of spreads it out more evenly.
And you, what was the company that did this analysis? And you have a stamp, obviously you have a stamp letter, Thomas already stated
Yeah,
that. So.
Kimley Horn Associates performed a traffic study. They performed traffic studies and analysis on this for 13
long time,
plus years, and one of the most highly respected traffic engineering firms, certainly in the area and the country.
Yeah, thank you. Is there any other things that you
Yeah, those are the two.
can? So, I mean, you're still in favor of waiting, or do you feel like we?
First of all, there's a motion on the table that hasn't been voted on. But secondly, that's fine. Secondly, we were given a boatload of information before tonight with a limited amount of time to view it, unlike, other applications that are a little bit less dense. We've also had over an hour of question and answer with these gentlemen.
Okay.
So I need time to digest it, and I would like to vote on the motion.
Okay. All right. So who was it? We had a motion and a second.
It was seconded.
Then I guess all in favor say aye. So I'm a nay, so that's 4-1. We would like to continue this next week. I still think, so it's simply that it's just to think about this and no one else needs any additional information because
It'd
we
be
would
helpful to
lose.
review the transcript,
Right, I understand. But I'm just saying, we have the opportunity to get more information now that if we don't ask for it, we won't get. So if anybody has anything that they would like,
Well, I think Tim, he put forward what, the other information that he would like. So, and I agree with that. And for me, it's also just a matter of time to give him.
and that's fair enough. You made a good point on that as far as that, being a lot of information. Is there anything else would like or need to see?
So I was going to say, what I have in my notes, go ahead. What I have on my notes is a little bit more information about the school-age children estimate. I will admit, because our calculators based on density ran it a couple different ways and get very different numbers. I'd also like to run it using the calculator that the rest of Wake County has, just so you have all of that information, because it's the same number of units, you change the acreage, it's going to spit out a very different number. Also have information about accidents in the area. I think I'd ask for some clarification. Is that Morrisville Parkway and C-54? Okay. And at the entrances to the development then? Okay. And that is all I have in terms of what I've taken notes on for additional information you'd like to see. Is there anything else?
Accidents, yeah, no, that's fine.
We're good. Okay, well, that is on, and I guess we will see you gentlemen next month.
Yeah, so December 14th, is that what you?
Yes, December 14th will be the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, I appreciate it. Thanks, it was a lot of information. Okay. Meeting schedule. Has anyone had a chance to review the meeting schedule? Is there any conflicts or anything that you know about that far in advance? Do we have a motion to approve the meeting schedule for 2024?
Make a motion to approve the meeting schedule for 2024.
A second.
2 seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Now we are on to the vice chair and chair nominations.
Before we take a vote, or, I'm sorry.
Go. Yeah.
I was just going to say, it might be helpful and more expedient if we determine who, if anybody, wants to run for position. So for example, if nobody else wants to run for chair, You're the chair, you don't need a vote.
Well, we would still, I think, need to vote to make things official. And
Because I think your PZB secretary is prepared to run you through that
Yeah, she's-
process
yeah, that's to
of
say, she-
taking nominations and walking you through that.
And Thomas, thank you for the presentation. That was a
Of
lot
course.
to
Thank
go
you.
through there. I'll be happy to continue to do it. Okay. Hey, works. So you said you were nominating yourself? No, she wants to nominate me. No one else wants to be nominated. You could have accidentally become the. Oh, and here is the previous. Yeah. And here's the.
Vice Chair.
Yeah. We have the vice chair as well. You're currently the vice chair. Kim, would you like to continue, or? Sure. Anyone else would like to be nominated for vice chair? Sounds like we coalesced around Ken. I think we could probably vote. Well, no one else. And I don't think Rick can currently be nominated because he's. Yeah. This is not the House of Representatives. We have to have someone within the board as the. No hanging chads in this.
So 2000.
Yeah, we should have punched these. Maybe this year I'll be gone. You missed your chance, man. I was gone, and we didn't have a meeting that night. Didn't even want it. Okay, thank you. So you'll forward those on and the board, will vote and let us know. Correct, they have to approve these? Yeah, thank you. All right, so we can go on to staff comments, including the planning newsletter.
Okay. Just go over the newsletter with the board briefly. Got in one new site plan application. That's for Sam's Express Car Wash on Chapel Hill Road. And one site plan was approved. That's the Duke Substation expansion on Morrisville Carpenter Road. And you may have noticed that they have started work out there. In other news, Town Council continues to discuss affordable housing. They recently had another work session discussion on affordable housing at their October 24th meeting, continuing to evaluate and explore options for that potential public employee down payment assistance program. They did also, at a prior meeting, look at options to potentially partner with a nonprofit to develop affordable housing on some land owned by the town, and had directed staff to look at a couple parcels. So at their meeting on October 24th, they did select the parcel at 101 to 105 Church Street, which is just over there at the corner of Church and Morrisville Carpenter Road, to look at potentially working with Habitat for Humanity to do some housing on that property. So we're beginning. The exact acreage of the property, it's not a large site, depending if you do single-family detached or townhomes, the number of units you're looking at could vary, but we're looking for Habitat for Humanity to start working with them. And, you know, we were estimating maybe 10 to 14 townhomes, I think. I can't remember what the numbers were for single-family, but, you know, they'll need to work through some site plans themselves and see what they could do if they're interested, if they can make it financially viable and work. But we have started that process.
So when you said this is truly from the corner, basically right across from the old town hall, the current fire station, correct? Right from that corner back, yeah.
Yes, yep. I also wanted to give you an update on the mural program. So an RFP was released soliciting proposals from artists to do murals on 3 town-owned properties. And just as a reminder, that was the Shiloh restroom building, the old fire station up at the corner where fire admin is now, and then the Morrisville Aquatics and Fitness Center. Got in 23 proposals by the deadline. So that first round was artists submitting their qualifications and providing samples of their work. But got some really great submissions, exciting to see all the interest. Those proposals or those artists that responded to the RFP were evaluated by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee at their last meeting. They have narrowed it down to 3 for each location, and those artists that were picked for each of those locations are now working on site-specific designs that will be evaluated as part of the next phase to narrow that down. But exciting to see that moving forward.
Is there a particular theme and sketch for that in general, or not? Just go do what you asked?
We did propose a theme of kind of community for the Shiloh restroom building, given the unique history of that area, but left it open for the other 2 sites for the artists to propose. So again, seeing those artists, you know, the actual designs that come in as they work on the site-specific designs will be part of that evaluation process. But that is all I have, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we have board comments. Let's start with Rick.
I thought it was good. I thought it'd be later, Michelle. Coming about 11 o'clock, 11:30. That's great. But no, I think it was good. I think it was good. A lot of stuff, a lot of materials.
Chris?
Oh, I thought the materials were very good. I'm excited over the changes. You know me, I love the change.
Ken?
Just hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving.
Tim?
That's a great way to say it. Go ahead. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, agree that Thomas and everybody did a good job. It's a lot of reading to get through, and yeah, so I appreciate the detail. All right, with that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone's already left that was from the public, but.
Chestnuts as a kid.
We never did that. Is that an old?